Hey guys, tonight we tumble into the gritty, grimy, gloriously unpleasant world of the Wild West. Imagine this. A sunrise so dusty, it makes your eyes itch. Air so dry, your lips crack just thinking about water and your bed. Not really a bed, more like a wooden slab with a blanket that smells like goat and regret. Welcome to the start of your worst day ever. Out here where comfort went to die. The floor creaks beneath you as you sit up, bones cracking like an old saddle hinge. The wooden walls around you don't do much to keep out the cold or the heat or the sound of your neighbor violently clearing his throat for the 6th time since dawn. There's a single window covered in dust, so thick you could carve your name in it. Light creeps through like it's afraid to touch anything in this room. And you're covered in a thin sheen of sweat, old grime, and something that smells faintly like horseshoe grease. You slept in your clothes. Again, not because you're lazy though, let's be honest a little bit, but because you only have one outfit. Your shirt is stiff with yesterday's sweat. Your socks have formed an unholy union with your boots and your hat. Well, it looks more like a tortilla someone sat on. No time to fix it. The day's already started, and the West waits for no one. Least of all a slowpoke with sleep in their eyes and saddle sores on their backside. Your mouth tastes like a tumbleweed, dry, bitter, and full of imaginary sand. You reach for your canteen hoping for a cool, refreshing swig. It sloshes. That's a good sign. You tip it back and, nope, just lukewarm water that somehow tastes like pennies and disappointment. Still, you drink it, because out here, even disappointment hydrates. The bed or cot rather groans as you stand. It's made of rope lashed across a crooked wooden frame. Your back feels like it lost a bar fight. You stretch and something pops in your neck that probably shouldn't have. One of your knees wobbles ominously. Welcome to your Wild West morning routine. Wake, regret, hydrate, hobble. Outside roosters are screaming like they're being interrogated. They don't crow here, they accuse. You step outside, instantly hit by a wall of hot air laced with manure and yesterday's gunpowder. There's no breeze, no birdsong, just flies. So many flies. And one of them makes a beeline for your ear like it's trying to borrow rent money. As you blink in the blinding sun, you get your first full view of the day. It's not promising. The town's only street is already bustling, if by bustling you mean a guy sleeping upright on his mule, 2 dogs fighting over a boot, and a woman yelling about beans from a porch that may or may not collapse during her next breath. This is civilization frontier style. You shuffle across the porch and immediately regret going barefoot. A splinter the size of a matchstick lodges itself in your heel. Great. First injury of the day, and you haven't even reached the outhouse yet. You limp forward, reminding yourself that you're a rugged pioneer. Never mind the limp or the involuntary whimpering. Every muscle aches. Not in a good workout way, but in a I slept curled up like a dead spider kind of way. Your shoulders feel like someone tied them into knots and then beat them with a ladle. Your back is less spine and more question mark. You are not ready to face the world, but the world doesn't care. A creaky wagon rolls past, pulled by a horse that looks as done with life as you feel. The driver gives you a nod. You attempt to return it, but forget that your neck has revolted. So instead, you grimace like a man trying to eat a cactus. He doesn't notice. Or maybe that's just how people greet each other out here, through mutual pain and dead stares. Scholars remain divided on just how filthy the average person in the Old West really was. Some suggest daily grime was offset by occasional dips in rivers or visits to bathhouses. Others argue that with limited water and constant travel hygiene ranked somewhere below, don't get shot today on the to-do list. What's not debated? The smell. Diaries from the era often mention odors strong enough to knock out a rat. You're living that reality now. You reach for your belt. Nope, not there. You used it to strap the shutters closed last night when the wind started howling like a banshee with a stubbed toe. You rummage around for your hat instead, only to find it has a hole right where the sun hits your scalp. Perfect. Your head's going to tan like leather by noon. By now, your feet are sending hate mail to your brain. The floorboards are splintery, your socks are crusty, and you're realizing that maybe, just maybe, you weren't cut out for the whole waking up in the Wild West thing. But it's too late. The sun's up, the town's awake, and you've got a long, dusty day ahead. And that's when you realize you still haven't gone to the bathroom yet. You shuffle toward the outhouse like a man facing execution. Each step is a negotiation between willpower and sheer bodily protest. The little wooden shack sits about 20 paces behind the main cabin, squatting at the edge of a scraggly brush line, like it's embarrassed to be here, which honestly it should be. You open the door and instantly regret all your life choices. The smell hits first, a potent blend of fermented misery and ancient secrets. Your eyes water. Your nostrils clench in revolt. A family of flies swarms out like you just interrupted dinner. One bounces off your forehead on the way out, as if to say, "Your turn, city slicker." Inside, it's a wooden box with a round hole carved into the middle. That's it. No seat, no paper, no dignity. Just a splintered board daring you to sit, and a suspicious stain that's been there since the Ulysses S. Grant administration. There's a crude latch on the inside of the door, but it's broken, held in place with a rusty nail and possibly a prayer. No lock means no privacy. And no privacy means the next cowboy looking for relief might just walk in and nod politely while you panic. You do your best to accomplish things quickly while also trying not to make physical contact with any surface. It's a balance of squatting, hovering, and awkwardly gripping a nail on the wall for support. Somewhere outside, a rooster lets out another accusatory scream. Maybe it saw you. Maybe it's judging. Scholars still debate whether the sanitation practices of frontier towns were merely inadequate or utterly non-existent. Some argue that communal outhouses were cleaned regularly by whom we'll never know. Others maintain that most just relied on the rain and wishful thinking. But no one contests this people in the Wild West had a deeply intimate relationship with filth. You finish your business and shuffle back toward the cabin, itching in places that defy anatomical logic. You swat at a fly that seems to have formed an unhealthy attachment to your left eyebrow. There's no soap, there's no sink. There's a tin bucket filled with murky water, and something floating in it that may have once been a leaf or a frog. You don't wash your hands so much as introduce them to the concept of moisture and call it a drawer. And now, breakfast. The cabin has a small wood stove. It's already lit, coughing out smoke through a crooked chimney pipe that whistles every time the wind changes. A dented tin pan sits on top, full of biscuits that could double as ammunition. You pick one up and it thuds on the table like a rock. Next to it, some slices of bacon, cold, leathery, and suspiciously green at the edges. You chew slowly, partly because it's tough, and partly because your jaw is too sleepy to protest anymore. The flavor, salt and dust, with notes of ash. A culinary masterpiece. You try to take a bite of the biscuit. You almost break a molar. There's a jug of something on the shelf. Coffee, maybe. You pour a cup. It's blacker than midnight and smells like boot polish. One sip later, and you're wide awake in the worst way. It's strong enough to power a steam engine, and now you're vibrating internally. Outside, the sun is climbing. Fast. The Wild West doesn't ease you into the day. It kicks the door open, throws heat in your face, and tells you to hurry up or get left behind. You can feel your skin starting to crisp, and you haven't even gotten dressed properly yet. Time to get those boots on. You reach under your cot and pull them out. They're still damp. You'd hoped they'd dry overnight, but apparently they spent the night absorbing more moisture, possibly from the atmosphere, or possibly from whatever lives under the floorboards. The smell is complex. Notes of mildew with a hint of despair. You jam your foot in anyway. Immediately regret it. Something squishes. You tell yourself it's just wet leather. You don't check. Boot number 2 goes on easier, but the moment you stand, the chafing begins. You haven't even taken a step yet, and your feet already feel like they're being slow roasted over a mesquite fire. But there's no time to complain. The day's moving, and so must you. As you buckle your belt tug on your hat, which still has that hole and grimace at your reflection in a cracked piece of mirror, you realize something uncomfortable. You've only been awake for about 40 minutes, and you're already fantasizing about a nap. But instead of rest, you step outside into the heat, into the flies, and into another episode of Let's See What Fresh Misery the West has in store today. And if you're still with me through this dusty disaster so far, whisper 1 in the comments below if this tale charms your heart, or 2 if it sends shivers down your spine. You take your first real step into the street, and immediately your boot crunches on something gritty. You look down. It's not just dirt. It's a layer of powder-fine dust covering everything like a beige frosting from hell. Even the air feels chewy, like breathing through a burlap sack that was used to store ashes. You blink, then blink again. Your eyelids scrape like sandpaper. There's already dust in your eyes, your ears, and disturbingly between your teeth. You smack your lips trying to rid yourself of the sensation, but all it does is rearrange the grit. Your tongue now tastes like a sun-baked wagon wheel. The town is waking up, if you can call it that. A sleepy-eyed man in suspenders drags a broom across the porch of the general store. He's not sweeping the dust away so much as just moving it in lazy circles. Across the road, a woman hangs laundry that's already collecting a fresh layer of airborne earth. You nod to her. She doesn't wave, just slaps a pair of trousers on the line with a sound like thunder and a face that says, "Don't start nothing, won't be nothing." You trudge along, feeling the soles of your boots absorb another layer of dirt with every step. The dust doesn't just sit there, it attacks. A light breeze picks up and suddenly you're engulfed in a swirling cloud of it, stinging your skin and stuffing itself up your nose. You sneeze once, twice, then a third time, so violently you almost tip over backward. The gritty air is relentless. Your throat dries out like you've been licking a brick. You reach for your canteen again, 2 sips left. You debate saving it, but decide your windpipe deserves a chance at life. You take one cautious gulp. Still warm, still disappointing. Out here, wind is a prankster. It never cools you off, it just rearranges the misery. Instead of feeling refreshed, you're now coated in a fine layer of airborne soil and the scent of hot livestock. It's not just uncomfortable, it's existentially offensive. You feel the West in your pores, and it is not apologizing. Experts still debate how often towns in the American frontier were actually cleaned, or if the inhabitants just gave up and accepted perpetual filth. Some claim that weekly sweepings and watering down of roads kept the dust manageable. Others point to traveler accounts describing whole towns buried under inches of grime, as if the desert was trying to reclaim what humans had foolishly tried to settle. Judging by your face right now, you're siding with the latter camp. You try not to lick your lips again, but it happens. Instantly, you're chewing on something crunchy. Is it leftover biscuit crumbs? Road dirt sand from 1847? You'll never know. You gag slightly and cough into your elbow, which is already damp with sweat, and that's the thing, the dust sticks. It doesn't just float, it bonds. It mixes with your sweat, your breath, even the bacon grease you didn't wipe off your chin. By the time you reach the stables at the end of the road, you've developed what can only be described as a crust. You look like a poorly aged statue carved from regret and overcooked flour. Your horse, bless him, gives you a side-eye like, "Oh no, not you again." He's a weathered beast named Clancy, with a mane that looks like it lost a bet, and hooves that seem to stomp only out of spite. You pat his neck and receive a dismissive snort in return. Partnership is a strong word for what you and Clancy share. He tolerates your presence the way you tolerate stepping on a cold floor at midnight, begrudgingly and with mild contempt. You tug at the saddle. It's heavier than you remembered. Or maybe you're weaker. Either way, lifting it onto Clancy's back feels like bench pressing a sleeping bear. You heave. It flops halfway on. Clancy shifts, clearly unhelpful. You adjust, struggle, and finally secure it with a rough cinch that pinches your own fingers in the process. You wince. Clancy snorts again. He's not impressed. As you fumble with the reins, a dusty breeze blows directly into your eyes, causing you to sneeze so hard you almost step into a horse pie. Almost. You recover just in time, stumble backward, and lean against a post that creaks ominously under your weight. And then it happens, your belt gives out. Not fully, just enough. Your holster drops an inch, dragging the top of your pants with it. You grab instinctively, but not before a passing child sees you fumble and laughs with the full innocence and cruelty of youth. You mutter something incoherent and adjust everything back into place, dignity hanging by a thread and a slightly loosened buckle. Here you are, a dusty, sunburned mess with chapped lips and horse stink, trying to look like a frontier hero, but resembling more of a walking cautionary tale. And this is just the first hour. Somewhere down the street, someone plays a harmonica slightly out of tune. It drifts through the dust like a sad little soundtrack to your growing discomfort. The West, it seems, isn't trying to kill you directly. It's trying to annoy you into the grave, one gritty mouthful at a time. You finally mount Clancy, though mount might be too generous a word for what just happened. It was more of a flop, followed by an undignified wriggle, and then a brief, intense negotiation with the saddle horn. But you're up. You're perched. You are technically astride a horse. Now comes the next trial moving. Clancy lurches forward with the enthusiasm of a librarian chasing a raccoon. You jolt in the saddle, feeling every motion of the horse transmitted directly through your spine. The saddle creaks ominously. Your inner thighs scream betrayal. And yet forward you go, bouncing down the sun-baked path like a sack of regret, strapped to a half-interested donkey. The town fades behind you, replaced by a panorama of dry scrub, broken rocks, and endless shimmering heat. There's no shade, no mercy, and no sign of water. The trail stretches on like a cruel joke, wiggling through hills that all look the same, dry, lumpy, and offended by your presence. Your hat does little to shield your eyes. The sun finds every gap and angle, heating your cheeks, your ears, even the back of your neck, which begins to prickle and sting. You shift in the saddle, hoping to find a spot that hasn't already gone numb. There isn't one. Your tailbone throbs with each step Clancy takes, and your knees have begun a quiet mutiny. This is when the true Wild West reality settles in. Riding a horse is not romantic. It's chafing sweat and the faint smell of something unwashed that might be you or might be the animal beneath you, possibly both. And the flies. Oh, the flies. They swarm like you're wearing a cologne called open garbage. They orbit your head, dart into your ears, dive into your mouth when you try to sigh. You start flailing, slapping your neck and waving your arms, which only makes Clancy annoyed and causes your right stirrup to slip. You nearly slide off sideways, but manage to yank yourself upright just in time. Clancy pauses to chew something questionable at the side of the trail. You don't ask what it is. Now out here in the open prairie, there's a peculiar soundscape. It's not quiet, not truly. The wind hums like a bored violin. Distant birds call with what sounds like mockery. A grasshopper zips past your face with the speed and sound of a tiny winged demon, and your own stomach growls in protest, still haunted by breakfast's bacon brick combo. You reach for your canteen, a few droplets left. You tilt it dramatically, trying to coax them out like you're negotiating with a reluctant ketchup bottle. Success, one sip. Warm, dusty, metallic. Your tongue reacts like it's been insulted. Historically, frontier travelers often suffered from dehydration without realizing it. Diaries mention thirst madness hallucinations and desperate moments like drinking from cattle troughs or chewing on cactus pulp. Scholars remain divided on whether settlers underestimated the climate or simply had no better options. Either way, you begin fantasizing about a cold orange soda that won't be invented for another 50 years. As Clancy trudges along, you pass a sign faded, cracked, and barely legible. It reads Silver Rock, 14 miles. That might as well say Moonbase, bring snacks. 14 miles in this heat. You'd rather eat your own boot, assuming you could chew through it with the one molar that hasn't surrendered yet. Still forward is the only direction. You adjust your posture, which is a mistake because now the saddle horn is digging into a very personal region. You shift again, which throws off your balance, which causes Clancy to swerve slightly, which causes you to grab the reins too hard, which makes him stop altogether and blow an angry snort directly into your leg. You take a break under a crooked mesquite tree, one of the few bits of shade you've seen all morning. You dismount slowly, every joint protesting like rusty hinges. Your legs wobble. Your boots hit the dirt with a puff of dust, and you almost topple over like a puppet whose strings were just cut. You lean against the tree and slide down to sit. The ground is hot, but at least it's not moving. You pull out a strip of jerky from your bag. It's tough, like chew it for 20 minutes and then maybe swallow tough. You gnaw at it like a desperate raccoon trying to open a locked Tupperware. Your jaw aches. You give up. The jerky wins. You lie back just for a second, letting the warmth sink into your bones. Your eyes flutter. The rustling of dry leaves above you is almost soothing. Then something drops on your forehead. You slap your face. Hard. Was it a bug? A lizard? Part of the tree? You'll never know. But you're awake again, painfully aware that relaxation is not included in your Wild West starter pack. You pull yourself upright, dust yourself off again, and stare down the trail. Silver Rock is still 14 miles away. Your horse is chewing something that looks like a bootlace. Your lips are cracked. Your shirt is soaked. Your soul is slowly evaporating through your boots. And yet somehow there's still a full day ahead of you. If you've made it this far and can still breathe through all the dust and sarcasm, tap 3 in the comments below if this story makes you smile, or 4 if it leaves you chilled. Back in the saddle again, unfortunately. Your brief rest beneath that thorny little mesquite tree did almost nothing to help. If anything, your spine feels stiffer, your thighs more chafed, and your mood, well, let's just say it's somewhere between irritated prairie dog and why was I born. Clancy, meanwhile, appears freshly energized after chewing a rock for 20 minutes. Of course he is. You clamber back onto the saddle with all the grace of a wounded walrus. The stirrups are suddenly too short, or maybe your legs have shrunk. You give up adjusting. Just accept the weird angle and hope your knees don't lock mid-ride. You whisper, "Let's go," as if Clancy speaks English and cares. He snorts. Dust rises. Off you go. About 3 bumpy minutes in a new discomfort presents itself. It starts as a small, scratchy sensation in an unspeakable place. You shift a little. That makes it worse. You sit forward. Now it feels like you're being exfoliated with a handful of thistles. Wool underwear. That's the culprit. A pair of thick hand-me-down long johns made from coarse sheep's wool worn too long and washed too little. You vaguely recall reading that wool was considered practical for the West, warm in winter, wicking in summer. But nobody said anything about the itching. And nobody warned you what it'd be like after riding for hours on a saddle with a seam in exactly the wrong place. You bounce, you scratch. You bounce again, but nothing helps. The friction is relentless. You try to distract yourself by looking at the landscape, dusty hills, shriveled cacti, a buzzard circling overhead, like it's already betting against your survival. Somewhere in the recesses of your soul, you begin to mourn the soft, elastic waistband of modern boxers. Now, experts still debate whether frontier folks simply got used to it or whether they were constantly itchy and just didn't complain. Some suggest that people toughened up, adapted to discomfort, or layered soft cloth beneath their scratchy garments. Others argue that personal journals rare, though they will frequently mention unrelenting irritation as part of everyday life. Judging by the way you're now squirming in your saddle like you're trying to do yoga on a mechanical bull, you suspect the latter. You consider standing up in the stirrups to relieve the pressure. That works for about 15 seconds until your thighs beg for mercy. You sit back down, hiss through your teeth, and resign yourself to being slowly sandpapered from the inside out. Clancy picks up speed for no reason at all. The bouncing intensifies. So does the itching. You contemplate abandoning decorum entirely and just dismount to do interpretive dance stretches in the dirt. Instead, you groan loudly, and Clancy flicks an ear like even he's annoyed by your whining. Up ahead, the trail forks. One path looks like it leads toward a distant canyon. The other, flatter and marginally more inviting, veers toward a low ridge. You guide Clancy toward the ridge, mostly because it's closer. Also, if you have to spend 1 more hour rocking back and forth on this leather torture device, you might genuinely snap. As you crest the hill, you get your reward, a breeze. Not a strong one, but enough to cool your face, flutter your shirt, and carry away some of the despair cloud hovering around your torso. For a few brief seconds, you almost feel human again. The breeze smells faintly of juniper and sun-baked pine, and cow, but mostly juniper. You reach into your saddlebag, rummaging around for anything that could lift your spirits. A dried apple, slice hard as a rock, but vaguely fruity. You chew on it slowly, cautiously, like a squirrel, trying not to dislocate its jaw. The sweetness is muted but comforting. It gives you just enough hope to sit up straighter, which was a mistake. Your belt shifts. The long johns ride up. You grimace. Down below the ridge, you spot something promising, a shack. Tiny, crooked, but clearly man-made. Could be a prospector's hut, or maybe just a pile of old lumber leaning on itself out of habit. Either way, it means one thing: company. Or shade. Or danger. You're not sure which excites you more. You urge Clancy down the trail, relieved to finally have a target. As you get closer, you realize it's occupied. There's smoke coming out of a metal stovepipe. A mule is tied out front, and a shovel leans against the wall, freshly used. You hesitate. The West isn't exactly known for friendly strangers. It's known for suspicious glares, loaded rifles, and accidental gunfights, started over spilled coffee. But you're itchy, you're sore, and you're about 10 minutes from emotionally unraveling over a pair of wool underpants. So you dismount, hobble over, and knock on the door. No answer. You knock again. Still nothing. Just the sound of wind-creaking boards, and Clancy relieving himself nearby with total confidence. You open the door. The shack is empty, thankfully. Dusty, cramped, but blessedly shaded. You step inside and feel the temperature drop 10 degrees. You exhale. The silence is almost holy. You set your canteen down and collapse into the nearest object that could be considered a chair. And that's when it hits you, the glorious absence of bounce. No saddle, no horse, no wool friction. Just stillness. You close your eyes and whisper the words of the day. Never again will I take cotton underwear for granted. The chair creaks beneath you like it's reconsidering its existence. But you don't care. You'd happily sit on a rattlesnake at this point if it meant 5 minutes off that cursed saddle. The air inside the shack is dry still, and just a little musty, kind of like someone once stored dead dreams here and then forgot to sweep. But compared to the scorching desert wind outside, it's heavenly. You peel off your hat and let your scalp breathe. The breeze through a cracked wall plank tickles your forehead, carrying the scent of pine wood and faintly scorched beans. Someone cooked recently. The pot on the rusted stove still has residue clinging to the sides, burned, congealed, and just slightly green. You lean in, sniff, then immediately regret it. Smells like someone tried to cook shoe leather with desperation gravy. You poke around the shack for signs of life. Nothing but a mouldy blanket, a Bible missing half its pages, and a pair of boots with holes the size of silver dollars. Whoever lived here either left in a hurry or never quite finished the living part. Outside, Clancy snorts again, a low and judgmental sound. He's standing directly in the sun, clearly content to marinate while you pretend this hut is a 5-star resort. You eye your saddlebag still strapped to the horse. Inside is everything you own. A half-eaten biscuit, a dull knife, and a harmonica you don't know how to play. Essentials, in other words. Eventually you sigh and rise to your feet, groaning like a floorboard. The itching in your woolen underlayers has dulled a little, but now your legs feel like wood, numb in patches, hot in others. You stretch. Something pops. You hope it was just a knee. Time to saddle up again. The walk back to Clancy is short but painful. You wobble like you've just stepped off a 2-day boat ride. Your hips have forgotten how to function. Your thighs have filed for divorce. Even your shadow walks awkwardly now. You reach Clancy and pat his flank, pretending this is a bonding moment when in truth you're just stalling. He stares at you with the long-suffering patience of someone who's witnessed every dumb thing you've done so far. Mounting him this time is less dramatic but still painful. You sort of roll into the saddle sideways and shimmy into place, hoping nothing tears in the process internally or externally. Once situated, you exhale through gritted teeth. The soreness has entered a new phase. It's not just discomfort now, it's memory. Your body will remember this day for the rest of your life. You flick the reins and Clancy lumbers forward like a reluctant bureaucrat. The trail picks up again, winding along a rocky ledge, where the wind starts picking up. Not refreshingly, of course. Just enough to blow dust directly into your ears. You tilt your head. You feel grit inside your skull. Down below, the land stretches out a beige and brown mosaic of endless sun-rolling sagebrush, and the occasional startled lizard darting under rocks. Somewhere in the far distance, the silhouette of a bison grazes. Or maybe it's a boulder. You're too dry-eyed to be sure. As you ride, a strange sensation creeps in. No, not enlightenment. Just heat. Specifically heat from the saddle. The leather has been baking in the sun all morning, and now it's conducting that warmth directly into your lower back and backside. It's like sitting on a slow-burning skillet. You wiggle. It doesn't help. Now comes the horse-saddling revelation. Nobody ever told you how painful this would be. The idea of galloping into the sunset is lovely in paintings, but in reality, you're bouncing on a sun-roasted slab of cowhide with sweat soaking through layers of itchy wool. You feel like a roast wrapped in burlap. Historians often glamorize the frontier rider stoic, enduring, heroic. But lesser-known accounts from cattle drives and westward treks describe daily agony, blisters, saddle boils, even scarring from constant rubbing. Scholars remain divided on how common these injuries were, but there's little doubt that the saddle was both throne and torture device. A cowboy's swagger, likely just a limp. Eventually, the ridge flattens out, and you spot your first real landmark in miles, a small creek, or what used to be a creek. Now it's a narrow stream of muddy trickle trying its best to look useful, but you don't care. Water is water. You dismount with a grunt. Your legs buckle briefly. You stumble to the edge of the stream and crouch down. The water smells vaguely of old leaves and rust, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. You splash it on your face, then cup some in your hands and sip. It's warm and gritty but glorious. You pour a little on your neck, letting it run down your back. Sweet relief. You dunk your hat and slap it back onto your head. Water drips down into your eyes. You don't mind. You could cry if you weren't so dehydrated that your tears have gone on strike. You refill your canteen, straining out the twigs with a scrap of shirt fabric. And then just because it's there, you take off your boots and dunk your feet in the stream. Heaven. Cold water kisses your ankles. The ache fades just a little. You close your eyes. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaks. Clancy takes a drink beside you. It's a rare moment of peace. Then out of nowhere, a fly lands directly on your eyeball. You jerk backward, swat violently, and fall onto your backside in the mud. Clancy snorts. Again, you look up at the sky now speckled with clouds, and wonder if the West was invented specifically to test your patience. You pull yourself up, soaked, gritty, itchy, and more determined than ever to survive. Not because you're tough, but because you're too stubborn to let a horse, a pair of long johns, and a demon fly win. You squish your soggy boots back onto your feet, grimacing as cold creek water soaks into the fabric like a sponge of shame. Your socks let out a slow squelch with each step, and you instantly regret the decision to enjoy that moment of peace. The West always makes you pay for anything that feels remotely pleasant. It's a rule unspoken but absolute. Clancy, refreshed from his muddy drink, gives you the barest of tail flicks as you prepare to mount again. You hesitate. You stare at the saddle, like it's an ex-girlfriend you're considering calling back. Not because you want to, but because it's the only option left. Finally, with a deep, quiet sigh, you hoist yourself up. The wet socks shift under your feet. You shiver. You are now the world's saddest cowboy popsicle. Back on the trail, the day's heat ramps up to a new level of cruel. The sun overhead has lost all trace of charm. It no longer shines, it glares. You'd swear it was staring directly at you, personally offended that you exist. Shadows disappear. The horizon wobbles with heat mirages that dance and shimmer like ghostly promises of relief. You know they're fake. Still, you stare at one for a full minute, convinced it's a building. It's a rock. Your throat is already dry again. You take a sip from your freshly filled canteen, only to find it has somehow already warmed into the temperature range of lukewarm bath and tepid regret. You drink it anyway. It tastes like twigs and possibly moss. The trail stretches out before you, a winding tan ribbon of despair. It leads past a gnarled dead tree, then dips into a shallow wash of loose stones. With every step, Clancy takes dust kicks up around your legs, like you're riding through a powdered donut factory run by goblins. Your face itches. Your arms itch. Even your eyelids itch. You cough. Your lips are now cracking at the corners. You lick them. Bad idea. Dust and dried sweat make an impromptu face scrub, and now your tongue tastes like bacon jerky that's been left in the sun since last Tuesday. And then you notice it, the unmistakable sound of your teeth. Grinding. Not in frustration, but literally. There's so much dust in your mouth it has formed a fine layer between every molar. You try to spit. Nothing comes out. You are a sand sculpture shaped like despair. Oddly enough, despite the suffering, the landscape is beautiful in its own indifferent way. Golden sagebrush covers the hills like scraggly fur. Sunday-bleached boulders rest like dinosaur bones in the dirt. A hawk wheels lazily overhead, possibly tracking you, possibly judging. You want to wave, but it might take that as a sign of weakness. Scholars remain divided on just how dusty the West truly was for everyday riders. Some claim that frequent rainfall and morning dew helped settle the trails. Others paint a picture closer to what you're experiencing, a constant onslaught of airborne soil kicked up by herds, wagons, and the collective ambition of overconfident pioneers. The jury's out, but your sinuses vote unbearable. You try wrapping a bandana over your mouth and nose, just like you've seen in the movies. It helps, a little, until it doesn't. The cloth quickly becomes damp from your breath and collects dust like a mop. Now, instead of sand in your mouth, it's paste. Progress ahead, the trail curves along a ridge with a drop-off to the left. You don't like heights. Clancy doesn't seem to care. He inches forward as you lean hard to the right, gripping the saddle horn like it owes you money. Below, sharp rocks beckon, and you begin composing your obituary in your head. But you make it, somehow. One dust-choked, thigh-burning step at a time. Just when you think it can't get worse, your canteen runs dry. Completely, not even a trickle. You shake it. Nothing. You hold it up to your ear. Still nothing. You try to convince yourself you're not thirsty. That works for about 3 seconds. Panic sets in around the edges. You scan the horizon. No rivers, no wells, no helpful clouds promising rain. Just land. So much land. And every bit of it determined to see how long it can bake the hope out of you. Then over the next rise, salvation or something like it. A low wooden sign reads, Black Lantern Ranch, 1 mile. Below that, someone carved in water 5 cents. You nearly weep. You spur Clancy into a faster trot, which feels like being slapped in the lower back with a sack of bricks. Still, the pain is worth it. Water. Real water. Maybe even shade. Possibly beans. You'll take anything. As the ranch comes into view, you realize how truly parched you are. You start imagining things: bathtubs, fountains, root beer, floats. None of which exist yet, but your mind doesn't care. You start singing under your breath. You don't know what song. It might be nonsense. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you've nearly made it to something resembling civilization. 1 mile. 1 mile of bouncing, chafing, gritty coughing, and desperate hope. You're not proud of what you've become. But pride is a luxury. Right now, all you want is a cup of water, and maybe a pair of dry socks that don't smell like regret and fungus. You arrive at Black Lantern Ranch, looking like you've just survived a minor apocalypse. Your hair is matted with dust and desperation. Your shirt has fused to your torso in patches of sweat, salt, and your boots squelch like sad accordions with every step. You slide off Clancy not gracefully, but in a way that resembles a slow, exhausted collapse. The ranch is modest, a low corral ringed with splintered fence posts, a stable that leans slightly to the left, as if it's been asking for retirement for the past decade. A windmill creaks overhead, lazily turning in the breeze with a wheeze like an old man trying to stand up too fast. A wooden sign above the front door says office in faded black paint. Next to it, the promise, water, 5 cents. You stagger toward it with your coin pouch already out. A grizzled man with sunburned arms, a long white moustache, and the expression of someone who's seen it all, including several versions of you, leans against the doorframe, chewing a toothpick with great suspicion. He eyes you. Hot one, he says, like it's a casual observation and not the most obvious understatement of your life. Water, you croak. He jerks a thumb toward a nearby barrel with a tin dipper hanging off the side. Nickel first. You dig into your pouch and offer up 5 cents with the reverence of someone donating to a sacred shrine. He tips his hat without moving any other part of his body. You stagger to the barrel. It's covered mercifully. You lift the lid and almost cry. Water. Real cool, clean water. You dip the tin ladle, your hands trembling, and take your first sip. It's cold. Beautifully cold. The liquid flows down your throat like forgiveness. You gulp again and again, ignoring the small voice of caution, reminding you that your stomach isn't ready. It doesn't matter. You'll take your chances. You rinse your face. You rinse your mouth. You dunk your hat again for good measure. When you finally look up, the rancher is still watching you. City boy, you nod. He nods back, clearly filing that away in his mental list of explains everything. You pay for another dipper full and pour it over your head. It runs down your back, cutting rivers through the dirt on your shirt. A few droplets even manage to sneak past the wool waistband of your long johns, causing a brief moment of joy that is instantly swallowed by the wet itchiness that follows. Still worth it. The rancher offers a dry chuckle. You got the look of someone who figured out the West ain't all sunsets and saloons. You want to say something witty, but the only sound you make is a raspy grunt that could be interpreted as agreement or mild choking. Either works. Clancy, meanwhile, has wandered to the shade of a leaning hay cart and is presently rolling in the dirt with the casual abandon of someone who didn't just suffer an entire morning of misery. You hate him a little, but you also envy him deeply. You sit on the edge of the water barrel and allow yourself to breathe. Around you, the ranch buzzes with quiet activity. Chickens peck at the ground with suspicious energy. A few ranch hands lead horses out of the stable, slapping dust off saddles and humming to themselves. Somewhere nearby, a goat bleats once then goes suspiciously silent. You're too tired to investigate. There's a strange peace here, unhurried, indifferent. The kind that says, yeah, everything's hard, but we're not dying today, so let's not rush it. It's the closest thing to civilization you've seen since sunrise. And then you realize you've been sitting for too long. You stand. Pain returns. Your knees crack. Your thighs scream. The saddle sores you tried to forget remind you of their presence with a vengeance. The itching starts back up. The damp wool clings to your skin like a remorseful ex. You hobble toward Clancy, dreading the moment you'll have to ride again. But first you head into the stable, hoping someone can help re-secure your saddle. Inside it's warm, but shaded the air thick with the smell of hay, sweat, and horses. A young stable hand, barely older than a lizard, nods at you and gestures toward a workbench full of straps, tools, and things you don't recognize. You ask if he can check your rigging. He says nothing. Just walks outside, yanks your saddle off like it's a feather, then expertly adjusts the cinch, replaces a fraying strap, and throws it back on. The whole operation takes 30 seconds. You stare at him slack-jawed. First day, he asks. You nod. Again. This seems to be your primary mode of communication now. Thought so, he says, and heads back inside. You climb back on Clancy, wincing. The saddle does feel slightly less murderous now. Progress. You tip your hat to the rancher. Thanks for the water. He nods. You heading toward Dustbone. You hadn't decided, but you shrug. Road's long. Watch for bandits past Drywash. You blink. Bandits. He grins. A full toothy, you're gonna regret this grin. Wouldn't be the West without 'em. And with that horrifying tidbit, you nudge Clancy back onto the trail. The sun is now overhead. Your shirt is dry again, but stiff as a board. The dust has settled in a fine coating across your face. You are a mess of sweat wool and deeply questionable life choices. But you're hydrated, you're resaddled, you're ready to ride, kind of. The trail stretches on. You adjust your hat and brace yourself for whatever comes next. Vaguely aware that whatever it is, it probably involves regret, pain, and possibly being robbed. Back on the trail again, and now with a stomach full of water sloshing like a poorly packed bucket, you ride toward a destination you didn't plan. Dustbone. The name alone sounds like something your chiropractor would scream in terror. But it's forward. And forward is the only direction left. Clancy seems in better spirits, possibly because he got to drink his fill and roll around like a dusty brat. You, on the other hand, feel like a stack of overcooked lasagna noodles wearing a sweaty shirt. The improved saddle fit helps a little, but the damage is done. Your thighs are officially tenderized. You bounce in the saddle like someone trying to hold in both pain and dignity. It's not going well. The trail narrows. On one side, a dry creek bed filled with jagged stones. On the other, a cluster of prickly pear cacti looking smug. You give them a wide berth. You've already learned that anything green out here is secretly a weapon. A few miles pass. The landscape blurs into a sun-bleached monotony of scrub brush, cracked earth, and the occasional animal skull that feels a bit too on the nose. At one point, you spot a rattlesnake crossing the path, slow and coiled, like it's daring you to make a bad decision. You don't. You freeze. Clancy wisely ignores it, stepping around with zero interest in adding snakebite to today's menu of woes. Eventually, you find yourself humming partly out of boredom, partly to convince yourself you're still sane. It's not a song you recognize, more like a mashup of wheezing and trail delirium. You think it might be catchy. Now's when the gun belt starts making its presence known. You've been wearing it for hours, thinking it adds some Old West legitimacy to your look. In theory, it's practical, keeps your revolver close, makes you look like someone people shouldn't mess with. In practice, it's a heavy leather strap, full of pointy metal bits, that jabs you in the hip every time Clancy lurches. The belt sags under its own weight. The revolver bounces against your thigh, like a persistent woodpecker. You try tightening it, and suddenly your breathing feels like an Olympic event. You loosen it again, and now it threatens to pull your pants down. There is no winning. You're a human pendulum. You shift. The holster digs into your side. You shift again. Now it's the back buckle grinding into your spine like a guilty conscience. You attempt to wedge a bandana between you and the buckle. That works for about 4 minutes before the bandana decides it's had enough and flutters away like a red flag of surrender. Gun belts, you realize, were not designed for comfort. Some experts argue they were meant to hang off the hips loose and easy. Others insist they were worn tight, keeping the revolver snug for a quick draw. Scholars remain divided on the exact placement, angle, and even necessity of the belt itself. What is not debated, the chafing. That part's unanimous. You finally snap. You stop the horse, unbuckle the gun belt, and sling it across the saddle horn with a grunt of triumph. Your hips rejoice. Your posture improves. You feel free, powerful, almost attractive again. For about 12 seconds. Then Clancy snorts, sidesteps, and the gun belt slips off the horn and falls directly into the dust. You dismount, sighing in defeat, and retrieve it. It's now covered in fine grit, as if to say, "You thought you were better than me." You shake it out and sling it back over your shoulder like a disgraced coat. You don't bother strapping it on. Let it dangle. Let it judge. You remount with a noise that sounds suspiciously like a whimper. Clancy begins plodding again, completely unmoved by your struggles. A few more miles pass. The sun blazes down, relentless and gleeful. Your shirt now has salt stains, shaped like maps. You've given up trying to wipe your face. There's no point. You are the dust now. It lives in your eyebrows. It has claimed your earlobes. You suspect it's in your soul. Then you see it, a saloon sign. At first you think it's another mirage. You blink. It's still there. The building rises out of the heat like an oasis, wooden walls warped by sun doors, swinging lazily in the breeze, a crooked sign that reads, "The Black Tooth." You grin. Or try to. Your face doesn't fully remember how. You ride up and tie Clancy to the rail out front, muttering something between gratitude and apology. He snorts again and starts nibbling the hitching post. Inside, it's dim and smoky. Not cool exactly, but at least shaded. A cracked piano leans against the far wall like it's had a long life of being ignored. One man is asleep in a chair. Another is arguing with a bottle. The bartender, an older woman with arms like tree trunks, wipes the counter with a rag that might have once been white. She eyes you. "Whiskey or water?" You wheeze. "Yes." She nods and pours 2 glasses. You down the water first. It's tepid and vaguely metallic, but it's wet. The whiskey follows it, burns all the way down and settles somewhere near your spleen, igniting a small campfire of awareness. A beat passes. You become aware of your own smell. It's not good. You discreetly lean away from yourself. Somewhere nearby, the man arguing with his bottle yells, "Cheatin' lizard," and slaps his own knee. No one reacts. This seems normal. You sip again, savoring the stillness. A piano key creaks for no reason. Outside, wind howls briefly through the broken shutters, as if reminding you not to get too comfortable. You realize grimly that you'll have to go back outside. Back into the sun. Back onto the saddle. Back into the slow rolling rhythm of discomfort that defines the day. But not quite yet. Right now you've got a warm drink, a wooden stool, and a breeze that smells more like dust than sweat, which by Wild West standards is practically luxury. You linger on that saloon stool like it's the last civilized object left on Earth. The wood is warped, uneven, and creaks every time you shift your weight, but it doesn't bounce, and that alone makes it feel like a throne carved from clouds. Your glass is nearly empty. The water's long gone. The whiskey sits low in your belly, doing its best impersonation of a warm coal nestled in your gut. You feel temporarily human, but that comfort is dangerous, because the longer you sit, the more you start to forget how awful the trail felt. Your brain, always eager to self-sabotage, starts whispering thoughts like, "That wasn't so bad," and "Maybe this whole cowboy thing is working out." You even consider ordering a second drink, and then you hear it, the word that resets your body into high alert. Cheetah. It rings out like a gunshot, sharp, loud, echoing through the timber and smoke. Every creak in the room freezes. The man who yelled it is rising from his chair, red-faced, and pointing across the poker table at a man who doesn't seem even slightly surprised. You, however, are not okay. Your pulse leaps, your back straightens, your hand flutters near your belt, except your revolver isn't strapped to your hip anymore. It's still hanging loose across your shoulder like a forgotten scarf of danger. You tug it into position, which only makes you look more nervous. The bartender sighs and ducks behind the counter without a word. Even the drunk asleep in the corner stirs slightly, just enough to slide his chair backward without waking up completely. Everyone in the saloon knows what's coming. You do not. Poker in the Wild West was serious business. Many a legend ended in a pool of blood over a fifth ace or a misread bluff. Historians debate whether the frequency of saloon gunfights was as high as folklore claims. Some say they were rare, sensationalized in newspapers. Others argue that every town had its own fair share of table-flipping, pistol-drawing chaos. Judging by the silence in this room, you'd say, folklore might have been onto something. You don't move. You don't breathe. The accuser slams a hand on the table. You draw that queen from under your sleeve, you no good. He doesn't finish the sentence. The accused, a wiry man with a lazy eye and fingers quicker than gossip, has already risen with a grin and a revolver. You duck. Instinct, not wisdom. Just pure, sweaty, terrified reflex. Your forehead hits the bar with a thunk. You hear the deafening crack of a shot. Wood splinters. A bottle behind the bar explodes. A chair crashes. Someone yells, "Get down." You're already there. Face pressed to the floor, trying very hard not to cry. Another shot. Then silence. Not calm. Silence. You lift your head just enough to peek over the bar. The cheater is gone. So is the man who accused him. Both bolted through different exits. One left his hat. The other left his pride. Neither left blood behind this time. The bartender rises again with all the expression of someone who's seen this before breakfast. She retrieves a broom, begins sweeping up glass, and mutters, "Second time this week." You stare at her. She shrugs. Shouldn't play with folks who don't blink. Your legs shake as you stand. Not from exertion. Not even from the heat. Just pure adrenaline, the kind that makes your stomach do somersaults and your hands feel like someone else's. You decide now is an excellent time to leave. You toss a coin on the counter, it rolls, wobbles, and disappears into a crack. You don't go after it. That coin now belongs to the floor. As you step outside, the brightness blinds you all over again. The sun has climbed higher while you were cowering inside, and now it beams down like a spotlight from an angry god. The air smells like scorched wood and gunpowder. Clancy looks up from where he's been chewing the saloon railing. He seems annoyed that you weren't faster. You untie him with shaky fingers and mount up. It's even harder now. Your limbs feel like overcooked noodles. The saddle feels less like leather and more like medieval punishment. But there's no choice. Not after that. You head out of town at a cautious pace, resisting the urge to keep looking over your shoulder. The West isn't just full of heat and dust. It's full of people, and some of them have very itchy trigger fingers. As the saloon fades behind you, you reflect briefly on how deeply you are not cut out for frontier poker, or saloons, or guns, or loud voices, in general. Still, there's one silver lining. You didn't get shot. Your nerves, however, may never recover. They've left the building, packed up, moved east. Ahead, the trail opens again into a broad, arid plain. The sun blazes down. Your lips are dry. Your shirt clings. But at least nobody is yelling cheetah, yet. You ride in silence now, your heartbeat still thudding in your ears from the saloon standoff. Even though the danger has passed, technically your body hasn't gotten the memo. Your shoulders are tight, your fingers twitch near your belt every time a bush rustles. You swear the birds are looking at you weird. Clancy, of course, is fine. Always is. He clops along with the slow, steady rhythm of someone who's seen every flavor of nonsense the West has to offer and no longer finds any of it worth reacting to. You envy that. Deeply. The land ahead flattens out. The trail widens into a hard-packed plain dry and baked to the consistency of old brick. There's not a single cloud in the sky. Just sun. Endless sun. And the distant shimmer of heat rising like ghost steam off the earth. The dust hasn't lessened. If anything, it clings more now, building up in your eyebrows, your lashes, and the crease behind your knees. You reach for your canteen. Forget that it's empty. Shake it anyway. A hollow rattle answers. Of course. But the worst part isn't thirst. It's your back. The saddle, once merely annoying, has become a sentient enemy. Every bounce jabs your spine like a tiny, well-placed jab from a sadistic chiropractor. You try leaning forward, then backward, then sideways. None of it helps. The heat has softened your posture into something resembling a melted S. Your vertebrae are staging a protest. You pass a lone cow skull sitting beside the road. Its hollow sockets stare up at you like a warning. You nod grimly. Mood. The silence is broken by a familiar, awful sound. A low, rhythmic creak. Not from the saddle this time. From you. Your joints are joining the protest. Knees crackle. Your right ankle starts sending tingly warning signs that feel suspiciously like it's thinking of taking a sabbatical. This is what no one tells you about the Wild West. It doesn't kill you fast. It just grinds you down. Out here, even gravity works overtime. The saddle pulls down on your hips. The sun presses on your shoulders. The heat drapes itself over you like a heavy, aggressive scarf made of steam. You've started slouching into a position that would make a yoga instructor weep. Historically, the average cowboy spent 10-14 hours a day in the saddle. Some argue that constant riding built up resilience. Others point to chronic joint pain, early spinal degeneration, and lifelong bow-legged gaits as evidence of what the saddle really did. Scholars remain divided on whether this slow bodily erosion was worn with pride or just endured because there was no alternative. You're currently leaning toward endured while screaming inside. And speaking of enduring, your pants have now fused to your legs. There's no other explanation. The sweat has dried into salt-crusted patches, stiff and sharp. Your knees no longer bend as they should. Every movement feels like you're trying to shift inside a barrel of stale crackers. Then off in the distance, hope a stagecoach approaches. You spot the rising dust plume first, then the silhouette of a 4-horse rig bouncing along the trail. It looks majestic from afar, noble, dignified. It is not. As it rumbles closer, you see the truth. One wheel is loose and wobbly, the driver is slumped, like he's half asleep, and there's a chicken tied to the back. You move to the side of the trail, tipping your hat as it nears. The coach rattles by in a cloud of dust and coughs. You cough too, just for company. Then you notice the smell. Oh no, oh no. The coach is trailing something more than dust. A miasma of pure human suffering hits your nose. The passenger window is open, and inside, pressed against the frame, is a man with wild eyes and a beard shaped like an accidental explosion. He stares at you. You stare back. He mouths the words, "Don't do it," and then they're gone. The smell lingers. Stagecoaches were never the luxury vehicles the paintings make them seem. Historians agree crammed interiors, minimal ventilation, and questionable hygiene turned most rides into sweaty nightmares. One diarist wrote of a ride so bad they opted to walk the next 30 miles instead. You understand that now. You press forward now, both grateful and resentful that you have your own mount. Clancy at least doesn't judge your odor. Ahead, the land begins to change. You spot low ridges, a few scrubby trees, and blessedly a shallow overhang of rock offering a patch of shade. You guide Clancy toward it, dismount, with an audible pop from your hip, and collapse into the dirt. The shade isn't cool exactly, but it's not sun, and that makes it sacred. You lie there for a while, too tired to swat at the fly crawling across your chin. The world tilts lazily. Your brain buzzes with the kind of thoughts people have when they're lightly concussed or dangerously thirsty. You try to imagine your old bed, a pillow, a bath, socks that haven't been weaponized by bacteria. The memory feels distant. Maybe you dreamed it. Maybe there never was a time before Clancy and the chafing. You drift somewhere between sleep and heatstroke, limbs twitching slightly, until Clancy lets out a low grunt. You blink your eyes open. It's time to ride again. No real rest. No fanfare. Just the endless road and your saddle-shaped nemesis. You haul yourself upright, groaning like a haunted barn door, and prepare to face whatever nonsense lies ahead. Because in the Wild West, you don't survive the day. You endure it. You climb back onto Clancy with the enthusiasm of someone entering a dentist's office that smells suspiciously like barbecue sauce. Your back cracks. Your hip pops. Your spine sends a strongly worded letter to your brain. You ignore them all. The shade is gone, the sun is back, and the trail rolls out ahead like an endless promise of disappointment. The landscape has shifted again. It's more rugged now. Rocky hills, dry gullies, and thorny brush daring you to get too close. Clancy picks his way forward with the grace of someone who's done this 1,000 times. You, on the other hand, have all the posture and poise of a man slowly being turned into jerky. About a mile down the trail, you notice something odd, the sound of hooves. Other hooves. They're faint, distant, but definitely not Clancy's. You glance over your shoulder. There, behind you, maybe half a mile off, are 3 riders. Distant, dark shapes, kicking up a slow trail of dust. You squint, hoping it's just your imagination, or maybe local ranchers. They don't appear to be moving fast, but they are moving your way. You feel the skin on the back of your neck tighten, even as the sun continues its effort to boil your scalp. You nudge Clancy slightly faster. Bandits. You don't know that. But your gut, recently trained by bacon bricks and dusty anxiety, has developed a good sense of incoming doom. You glance at the terrain. Not great. Wide open, no cover. A few rocky outcrops, but nothing close enough to use. You consider dismounting and hiding, but where the nearest bush is a spindly thing, no taller than your thigh. It couldn't hide your canteen, let alone your quivering frame. And so, like the rational, well-hydrated frontiersman you aren't, you decide to ride faster. Clancy, bless his dusty heart, doesn't question you. He picks up the pace, trotting down the trail, with a bit more pep than usual. Maybe he smells trouble too, or maybe he's just trying to get away from your increasingly loud groaning. The wind kicks up. You squint against the dust, urging Clancy onward. Your gun belt slaps against your hip with every stride. You haven't fired a gun in your life, not seriously. You once shot at a can, missed, and hit your own bootlace. The idea of a gunfight sends a cold tremor down your back, which is impressive considering the air temperature. The hooves behind you sound closer now. Banditry in the Wild West is a subject of both history and myth. Some say highwaymen were everywhere, lurking near every outpost and waiting to ambush travelers. Others argue they were few and far between, and most accounts were exaggerated for drama. But one thing's clear, Stagecoach robberies, trail ambushes, and cattle rustling did happen, often by men with nothing to lose and a very loose understanding of gun safety. You scan the horizon and see salvation or a mirage. A cabin, tiny, battered but real, tucked into a crook of the hills, partly hidden behind a rocky shelf. Smoke curls faintly from a stovepipe. You steer Clancy toward it, adrenaline now overtaking logic. You reach the cabin just as the hooves behind you grow loud enough to identify as actual pursuit. Clancy skids slightly on the loose dirt. You leap off and pound on the cabin door like a tax collector during a famine. It opens. The man inside is ancient beard, down to his chest, eyes like cracked glass and one eyebrow permanently raised in disapproval. He doesn't say a word, just gestures you inside. You step in. The air smells like kerosene-boiled coffee and socks that gave up long ago. "What's chasing you?" the old man rasps, as if he already knows. "3 riders," you say, panting. "Might be bandits." He nods. Might be. Might be census takers. Either way, they ain't coming in here without a reason. You glance around. 1 window, 1 door, 1 rifle hanging above the fireplace. You eye it hopefully. "No," he says, flatly following your gaze. "That's for wolves." You nod, pretending that clarifies things. He moves to the window, peers out, and mutters something unintelligible. Then he disappears into a back room. You stand in the center of the cabin, trying not to touch anything. Everything is sticky sharp or both. There's a chair with only 2 legs, a kettle that appears to have melted slightly, and something on the floor that may once have been bread. Clancy whinnies outside. You flinch. And then hoofbeats, right outside. The door creaks open again. The old man stands there, shotgun in hand, now 1 eye squinted and 1 foot forward. "Can I help you, boys?" he says, voice dry as corn husks. You crouch behind a table that wobbles at the sight of you. 3 men on horseback sit just outside, dust-covered. 1 with a red bandana around his face. Another with an eye patch. The third just looks angry, like the kind of man who kicks over bird baths for fun. "We're looking for someone," says bandana guy. "Look elsewhere," the old man replies. A long pause. Then slowly the riders turn their horses. No drama, no drawn guns, just quiet departure. The old man watches until they disappear over the ridge. Then he lowers the shotgun, spits into the fireplace and says, "Telling you, census takers." You stare at him like he's a myth. He points to a chipped enamel cup. "Water's in the blue pot. Pour yourself some." "You look like your soul's been baked." You do. You drink. It's hot, metallic, and possibly infused with beans, but it's water. He sits down across from you and pulls out a pocket knife, slowly peeling a bruised apple. "You headed for Dustbone?" he asks. You nod. It's the only word you still remember. He chuckles. "You might make it. If the desert don't eat your socks and the flies don't eat your eyeballs first." A beat of silence passes between you. Outside, Clancy snorts. The wind whistles. You sip your bean-tinged water and wonder if this man is your guardian angel or just a retired bandit with good manners. Either way, you survived. Again, just barely. You leave the cabin with a belly full of mystery water, a pulse that's no longer breakdancing, and a deeper respect for elderly men with shotguns and 0 patience. The old man didn't ask your name. He didn't offer his. You shared a cup of something that might have been apple stew and might have been runoff from a forgotten rain barrel. Doesn't matter. You were safe for an hour. In the Wild West, that's basically a vacation. Clancy waits patiently outside, chomping lazily on something unidentifiable and possibly still alive. His tail flicks once in greeting or dismissal, you can't quite tell anymore. You pat his flank, offer a quiet thanks for not bolting, and haul yourself back into the saddle. It feels a bit like trying to climb onto a hot loaf of bread while wearing pants made of regret. As you ride away from the cabin, the trail curves downward into a broad valley. The land opens again, vast and unwelcoming. No trees, no towns, just miles of yellowed grass, cracked earth, and the occasional buzzard riding a lazy current overhead. They've been following you more often. You're starting to take it personally. Your stomach growls. Loudly, you fumble through your saddlebag, hoping you'd forgotten about some miracle food item. What you find instead is a strip of jerky so dry it bends the wrong way when you try to snap it. You gnaw at it anyway, chewing like a cow with a vendetta. You try to remember the last proper meal you had. Was it that biscuit this morning? The one that nearly cracked your jaw? Or was it the half-burnt bacon back at the shack with the angry rooster chorus? Either way, your body is screaming for nutrition, and all you've given it is stringy beef and boiling sun. The wind shifts, carries a new smell, something faint, bitter, and unmistakable. Smoke. You scan the horizon. There, in the far distance, a thin column of grey drifting upward. Could be a fire pit. Could be a brush fire. Could be someone else in trouble. You hesitate. Westward is the way to Dustbone, but the smoke rises just a little south. Curiosity wins. Or maybe it's that tiny voice in your head that says, if you're going to suffer, you might as well do it interestingly. Clancy turns without protest. He seems equally unimpressed either way. You ride toward the smoke. The land grows rockier. The trail disappears altogether. Clancy weaves through sagebrush and crumbling shale. You duck under low branches that look like skeletal arms twisted by years of wind and sun. The air grows hotter, thicker. The smell intensifies, burnt wood oil, something meaty. You crest a ridge and see the source. A wagon. Burned halfway to nothing. One wheel is still intact, spinning, slowly creaking with a musical eeriness that feels entirely inappropriate. The fire's mostly out now, smoke curling from the embers. Scattered supplies lie all around. Charred crates, broken glass, a frying pan, melted into the dirt. No bodies. Just silence. You dismount cautiously, every sense on edge. Clancy stays behind, pawing at the ground, as if to say, "You go ahead, genius." You approach the wagon. A scorched pot of beans still bubbles weakly in the ashes. You find a canteen dented, but full and drink, without even sniffing it first. You don't care. It's warm, slightly gritty, but glorious. Then you hear it. A soft nasal whine, like a wheeze wrapped in a whimper. You follow the sound and find a dog. Small, shaggy, with singed fur and one ear standing straight up like a tiny flag of defiance. It's curled under a splintered bench, staring at you with eyes too big for its soot-covered head. You crouch down slowly, whispering nonsense like, "Hey buddy," and not going to eat you until it stops growling. Eventually it inches forward. You offer a strip of jerky. It sniffs, then snatches it from your hand and chews like it hasn't eaten in days. You glance back at the wagon, then the dog. Well, you murmur, "Looks like it sucked to be you today too." The dog licks your boot once and sits beside you. You have a companion now. You name him Soot. With Soot trotting alongside and Clancy now thoroughly unimpressed, you head west again. The sun is lower, casting long shadows. The heat starts to break slightly. Your back still hurts. Your thighs still itch. But now you have company. And somehow that makes the day feel 2% less soul-crushing. Historical records often overlook the presence of dogs on the trail, but letters and journals occasionally mention trail mutt strays who adopted travelers, not the other way around. Experts still debate whether these dogs were actually helpful or just scavengers with a good sense of direction. Judging by the way, Soot keeps one eye on the road and one eye on your saddlebag, you suspect it's both. The three of you horse mutt and barely functioning human trudge westward as the sky begins to glow pink around the edges. You think about what you've survived so far. Heat stroke, long john trauma, a near shootout, questionable bacon, and now a burned wagon that smelled faintly of sorrow. You wonder what tomorrow will bring, but you don't dwell on it. Because in the Wild West, you don't plan too far ahead. You just keep riding. You and Soot ride in silence, as the last heat of the day sighs out across the land. The dog jogs just ahead of Clancy, kicking up small clouds of dust with each step, and occasionally pausing to sniff a rock, a bush, or the concept of hope, none of which smell particularly good. You don't talk to him, not because he'd answer though. At this point you wouldn't be surprised, but because your lips are too dry to form anything more complex than a grunt. The sun dips lower. Long shadows stretch across the trail like lazy ghosts. The light turns golden and then almost copper, painting everything with a warm hue that would be beautiful if you weren't so profoundly uncomfortable. Every inch of you feels raw. Your legs are no longer legs. They're burlap sacks filled with regret and loose joints. Your back, a haunted xylophone. You try shifting positions in the saddle again, and it's just as pointless as before. The best you can do is pick the least painful angle and commit. Up ahead the trail narrows again, curving toward a canyon pass. Red rock walls rise on either side like the world is slowly closing in. You glance at Soot. He slows ears twitching. Clancy snorts and stiffens. Something's off. You tug the reins lightly. Clancy stops. You listen. Silence. No birds, no wind. Not even the buzz of a fly. Just stillness. And stillness out here usually means one of three things: a predator, a storm, or someone who wants to put a bullet in your boot to see what else falls out. You dismount carefully, leading Clancy by the reins as you approach the pass. Soot presses close to your leg, not growling but on alert. You reach down and check your revolver. Still there, still dusty, still not exactly a comforting presence. The walls of the canyon rise higher, shadows deepen. You glance up, half expecting a bandit to leap down like a theatrical raccoon. Nothing. You keep moving, the sound of your boots crunching on gravel suddenly deafening. And then you hear it, a voice. Mighty fine horse you got there. It's calm, smooth, echoing just enough to make you unsure where it came from. You freeze. Soot stops. Clancy turns his head like he's already planning how to flee. I'd say that saddle alone is worth a fair pile of silver. You slowly turn in a circle, eyes scanning the rocky ledges. Then you spot him. A man in a tan duster, perched like a lizard on a ledge 10 feet above you. Wide-brimmed hat, long rifle resting across his lap, and a look on his face that says he's not bored yet, but he's getting there. I ain't got silver, you say, trying to keep your voice even. He smiles. Didn't ask if you had it. Just said what things were worth. You glance toward the canyon exit, not far. Maybe 100 yards. But wide open. You clear your throat. Listen, I've had a rough day. I'm itchy, I smell like desperation, and this dog's got more sense than I do. So if we're gonna do this, can we do it fast? He raises an eyebrow, then chuckles. I like you. You don't like that he said that. Then another voice. Behind you. Drop your belt. You turn. Another man. Younger. Not smiling. Revolver aimed squarely at your chest. You sigh. Robbery in the West was rarely cinematic. Most accounts describe ambushes like this, quick, tense, often decided without a single shot. Scholars argue whether the image of the masked bandit leaping from behind a rock was more myth than truth. But here you are living the cliché. You drop your gun belt. It lands in the dust with a solid thud. Soot growls. The second man flinches. Easy pup, says the man above. We just want the shiny stuff. Joke's on you, you mutter. I don't own anything shiny. Closest I got is a half-melted harmonica. He grins again, then gestures. The younger one approaches, steps slowly toward your saddlebag. Clancy shifts. You whisper a quick apology to the horse under your breath. As the man reaches for your supplies, something changes. Soot lunges. A blur of fur, a flash of teeth, and suddenly the young bandit is shouting, stumbling back, tripping over a rock, and landing hard on his tailbone. The rifleman on the ledge lifts his gun. But you're already moving. You dive for your gun belt roll and come up with the revolver cocked, not that you know what you're doing. You point it near the man on the ledge. Don't you wheeze. To your surprise, he doesn't. Instead, he lowers the rifle, tips his hat, and says, "Didn't think you had that in you." You don't. Your hand is shaking so badly the barrel waves like a stick in the wind. "Come on, Jeb!" The man calls to his partner, still cursing and trying to shoo Soot away. "We're done here." They disappear, quiet as smoke. You stand there for a long time after they're gone, gun still drawn, chest heaving, sweat pouring into your eyes. Soot trots over, tail wagging, tongue out like he just completed a successful mail delivery. You drop to your knees, bury your face in his fur and whisper, "Okay, you can stay." Clancy snorts, clearly unimpressed. You ride out of the canyon slower this time. No rush now. The adrenaline crash hits like a wagon wheel to the face. You feel shaky, hollow, and somehow a little more you than you did this morning. That was your first standoff. You didn't shoot. You didn't die. Call it a win. The West might be trying to break you, but today, you bent back. You ride out of the canyon, like someone who's aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Your shoulders droop. Your stomach feels like it's trying to leave your body out the back. And your right hand still won't stop trembling, not from fear anymore, just from the sheer overload of being almost shot, almost robbed, and definitely disrespected by gravity, all within the same hour. Soot trots beside you, tongue out, tail high. He seems proud, as well he should. He bit a man twice his size and walked away like it was breakfast. You're not sure whether to pat him or apologize. You do both. Clancy plods along, either unaware or uninterested in the danger you just faced. Or maybe he's just used to it. His ears twitch now and then, but his stride stays steady, slow, and unimpressed. You begin to wonder if deep down Clancy's judging you. The trail opens into a wide basin, a shallow valley dotted with dry tufts of grass and rocks, shaped like slumped shoulders. The wind picks up. Not a refreshing wind, mind you. No, this one carries sand, coarse, relentless sand that pelts your face with the subtlety of an angry cat flicking gravel at your cheeks. You try to shield your eyes with your hat. The hole in the crown laughs in your face. Your tongue feels like a cotton ball soaked in regret. You reach for your canteen, still empty. You shake it again as if shaking it will magically produce water. It doesn't. The sun climbs higher. There's no cloud cover, no mercy. Your lips crack further. Your throat aches. Even your eyeballs feel dry. You glance around, nothing. Not a river, not a spring. Just dry earth and tumbleweed carcasses. You squint at a distant shimmer. A puddle. A pond number. Just another lying mirage. You mutter curses under your breath, nothing loud enough for the dog to hear. You don't want to lose your last remaining ally. Scholars remain divided on how often travelers found water while crossing the high deserts and plains. Some suggest that watering holes were known and mapped. Others claim that many relied on luck, local guides, or pure guesswork. What isn't debated is the rate of dehydration. It was fast, it was brutal, and it killed more people than duels ever did. You try to think of something else, anything else, like shade, or pie, or ice. You haven't felt cold in so long that you start fantasizing about snowstorms, the kind where you bundle up, press your face to a cold window pane, and watch flakes pile onto rooftops. You'd give your left boot to feel one shiver right now. Heck, you'd give both. Soot starts to lag. He pants heavily, tongue lolling to the side. His ears droop. Hang on, buddy, you croak. We're close to something. You don't know what, but something has to come next. That's how this day has worked. Pain, misery, and then something. And sure enough, just when you're about to dismount and cry into the dirt, you spot it. A shack. Another one. You blink. It's real. You can hear the boards creak in the wind. You can smell something cooking, or maybe that's your brain trying to manifest soup. It's small, crooked, possibly abandoned. You hope it's not. You ride closer. There's movement. A curtain flutters. A soft sound, could be a door, could be a human groan. Doesn't matter. You'll take your chances. You knock, then knock again, louder. A voice rasps from inside. It's open. You push the door gently. It creaks like a haunted fiddle. Inside it's dim and surprisingly cooler. The walls are patched with old tin. There's a table, a stove, and a man, old, thin, with a face like tree bark and eyes that have forgotten how to blink. He looks up at you. You're late. You blink. He shrugs. Didn't say you were expected. Just that everyone's always late when they show up. You nod slowly, like that makes sense. Maybe it does. Maybe you're finally delirious enough to understand this place. He gestures toward a jug in the corner. Water. You can pour it yourself. No one here's going to fetch it for you. You don't wait. You move. The jug is half full. The ladle is dusty, but not alive. You pour. You drink. It's cool. Cool. Your whole body reacts like a plant during a rainstorm. You feel the water flow down your throat into your chest, filling you with something that might be hope or might just be less thirst. You give Soot a bowl. He drinks greedily, then lies flat on the floor, tail still wagging. The old man eyes you. You got the look of someone who just realized the West ain't a painting. You nod. More like a slap. He chuckles. That's honest. You sit at the edge of the table, not in a chair. You don't trust chairs anymore. The man says nothing more. Just goes back to whatever he was doing before, a puzzle maybe, or just thinking. The silence settles. You let it. You sip again. You breathe. You sweat. But this time, the sweat feels like it belongs. You've made it through the worst of the day's heat. Maybe. There's still dust. Still pain. Still a long road ahead. But for the first time in hours, you're not thirsty. You're not alone. And nobody's pointing a gun at your head. In the West, that's the trifecta. You stay in the shack longer than you mean to. It's not comfortable, not by any stretch. But there's something about the stillness, the dim light, and the mild smell of old beans and pipe smoke that wraps around you like an itchy blanket you don't have the energy to throw off. The old man hasn't said another word since that first weird exchange. He just sits in a corner chair sharpening a knife that doesn't seem dull and smoking a pipe that doesn't seem lit. Soot snores gently at your feet, his little chest rising and falling in a rhythm that almost makes you drowsy. Almost. But you're not allowed to relax. Not really. Not out here. You can take off your boots. Sure, you can let your shoulders sag. But true relaxation, that's for people with doors that lock and towns that don't smell like scorched jerky and regret. Still, your boots are off. Your toes, though swollen and vaguely shaped like overboiled sausages, feel gloriously free. You flex them gently, grimacing at the pops. The socks you remove have achieved a new level of stiffness, possibly a new sentience. You drape them near the stove just to not look at them anymore. After a while, the old man clears his throat. You gonna sleep here or keep moving? You blink half unsure if you imagine the voice. Dustbone, you mutter like that explains anything. He nods once slowly. Still got time before the sun drops. Not much, but enough. You don't know if he's warning you or daring you. You look outside. The light's going amber, that strange magic hour glow where everything looks like it might be peaceful. You know better. That glow lies. Still, you can't stay. The shack doesn't feel like a safe house. It feels like a pause. And pausing too long out here. That's how the desert wins. You gather your things, nod awkwardly, and whisper a thank you that might as well be wind. The old man doesn't reply. He just returns to his not dull knife and his not burning pipe. Soot follows you out, without a word, stretching as he exits like he owns the place. Clancy greets you with a huff and a tail swish, which at this point is practically affection. You saddle up again. Your feet scream, your legs groan. But the water helped. Your skin no longer feels like stretched leather. Your brain has stopped buzzing like an overheated telegraph machine. You head west. The land shifts again. Hills grow steeper. The grass thins. The wind kicks up with more confidence, rolling across the earth like it's checking for survivors. And then, as if summoned by your rising sense of optimism, it happens. You sit on a cactus. Not fully, not in a cartoonish bottom-first way, but close enough. You'd stop to check your saddlebag because you swore you packed a second biscuit. You didn't. What you did do in your hunger haze was squat next to what looked like a patch of greenish shade. It wasn't. It was a low, deceptively plump cactus, nestled between rocks like a trap sent by nature herself. And now, your thigh, your left inner knee, and at least one unforgivable place on your backside, all have needles in them. You freeze. You whisper the word no in 7 different tones. Soot bless. His soul tilts his head. Like, what have you done now? You try to stand slowly, but one needle shifts, and you make a noise, somewhere between a sneeze and a scream. Clancy flinches. You grit your teeth and examine the damage. There are at least 20 little hair-thin spines sticking out of your leg. 2 longer ones are embedded right at the seam of your pants, nature's cruelest joke. You can't leave them in. That much you know. But pulling them out, that's a whole different flavor of suffering. So you do what any self-respecting frontier fool would do, you take off your pants. Historically, cactus injuries were a common nuisance in the American West. Early medical guides actually had sections on how to extract needles, suggesting tools like tweezers, hot water, or simply gritting one's teeth and bearing it. Scholars still debate whether cowboy culture viewed cactus injuries as a sign of clumsiness or just an inevitable tax for existing near desert plants. Either way, right now you feel like you've paid a very painful toll. You sit on a rock, one pant leg pulled up and the other tossed to the side, plucking spines one by one. Soot lies down in front of you, watching like he's monitoring a surgery he's not qualified for. Each needle comes out with a tiny pinch of agony, followed by the kind of satisfaction that feels wrong, like a sneeze in church, or scratching a sunburn. The last big one takes a while. It's deep. You curse the cactus, the trail, your life choices, and the universe in general before finally yanking it free with a yelp. You dress again, slowly, cautiously, and now very aware of every rock and bush in your path. Clancy snorts. You're pretty sure he's laughing. You mount up extra gingerly and resume the trail. The sun has started to sink behind the hills, now washing the sky with red and orange. The air cools slightly. Not much, just enough to make the dust settle instead of swirl. You glance down at Soot. He trots beside you like nothing happened. "Thanks for the warning," you mutter. He sneezes in response. And then, as if the universe wants to make sure you never relax, you hear a long, low howl in the distance. Coyotes. Of course, because it's never just one thing out here. The howl lingers longer than it should, curling into the dusk like a thread of warning. You stop mid-bounce in your saddle and listen, jaw-clenched, breath shallow. Another howl joins the first, this one higher-pitched, more urgent. Then a third, maybe a fourth. The sound rolls across the basin like it's searching for a name to attach itself to. Soot lets out a low whine and presses closer to Clancy's flank. You don't blame him. You consider joining him down there. Clancy's ears go flat. He shifts uneasily beneath you, and you feel that familiar wobble in the saddle that means, we should not be here right now. Coyotes aren't the worst thing out here. They're smaller than wolves, less organized than mountain lions, and usually too cowardly to approach a full-grown horse. Usually, but hunger changes all creatures. And it's dusk, the time when shadows lengthen, common sense weakens, and every little noise sounds like a death rattle. You scan the horizon. Nothing. Just dry hills, patches of sagebrush, and the kind of orange sky that would be romantic if it weren't actively trying to kill you. You mutter to Clancy. "We keep moving." He obliges, slowly. You pick up the pace. Not quite a gallop, more like a worried trot. You don't want to burn him out, but you also don't want to be the guest of honor at a coyote dinner party. Soot keeps close ears, twitching, head low. The howls fade. That's somehow worse. Silence from predators is never comforting. It's tactical. You strain to hear, trying to pick out paw steps, brush, rustling, anything. Nothing. Just the rhythmic plod of hooves, the occasional clink of the stirrup, and the annoying slap of your canteen against your hip. Then, it happens. A flash of movement in your peripheral vision. You twist, just in time, to see something dart between rocks low to the ground, fast and covered in grey fur. A shape, a blur, gone. You don't shout. You just tighten your grip on the reins and hope your saddle doesn't betray you again. Coyotes were a common nuisance in the Old West, especially for travelers moving alone or with vulnerable animals. Journals from wagon trains often note missing chickens, scattered supplies, or dogs gone in the night. Scholars still debate how often these predators attacked people directly. Some insist they stuck to easy prey. Others argue that desperation and drought made them bolder. You're leaning toward the bold and hungry camp, especially now. You crest a rise, and there blessedly is a narrow canyon up ahead, shadowed and sheltered. If you can get through it before full dark, you might make it to safer ground. You nudge Clancy into a trot. The saddle grumbles beneath you, but you ignore the pain. You've got other problems now. The canyon walls rise quickly, blocking out the last of the sun. Instantly, the temperature drops 10 degrees, and you can feel your sweat cooling into a sticky sheen under your shirt. The wind dies. The silence grows sharp again. You feel eyes. Not a metaphor. Actual eyes. The kind that blink once, then vanish. Clancy stutters in his stride. Soot stops, ears back. Something moves to the left, then the right. You don't draw your revolver not because you're brave, but because you're not sure you can hit anything that fast. Instead, you reach down and pull out the harmonica from your saddlebag. Yes, the harmonica. It's the only object in your possession not currently covered in dust, blood, or shame. You raise it to your lips, take a shaky breath, and blow out a few clumsy notes. The sound echoes through the canyon, reedy, tinny, and undeniably pathetic. You play a wobbly version of "Oh Susanna," if Susanna had recently been trampled by a cow and left out in the sun for a week. And for a moment, it works. The noise breaks the silence, breaks the tension. The sound is unfamiliar, unpredatory, even irritating. Whatever was stalking you pauses confused. You feel it, a hesitation in the darkness. You play another line, badly. It squeaks. It's off-key. It's glorious. Soot barks once. Not a warning bark, more of a "what the heck are you doing" kind of bark. But it does the trick. The canyon remains quiet. You keep playing. The same 3 notes over and over, like a musical threat from someone with no talent and even less fear. Clancy snorts. You think he might be smiling. You keep going. After what feels like an eternity, you reach the end of the canyon. The terrain opens up into a plateau. Moonlight begins to edge into the sky, silvery and cold. The stars are just blinking on, faint and lazy. You stop playing. You wait. Nothing. Just wind. You exhale. Hard. The coyotes are gone. Or they've decided you're too weird to be worth the trouble. Either way, you've survived. Again, through sheer dumb luck, a poorly tuned harmonica, and a dog with teeth like kitchen knives, you dismount on shaky legs and slump onto a flat rock. Soot flops down beside you. Clancy takes a few steps, then drops into a standing doze with the kind of grace that only horses and old drunks can manage. The sky darkens. The first real night chill creeps into your bones. You shiver, then smile. A real one. Small, tired, but real. You're not dead. Not yet. And in the West, that's sometimes the biggest victory of all. Morning arrives like a slap. There's no gentle dawn chorus, no warm beams of light caressing your face. Just a single aggressive sunbeam poking through your eyelids like it's trying to pull you into consciousness by force. Your eyes open. You regret it instantly. The light is blinding. The air is dry. Your entire body has congealed into one solid ache. You're on the ground curled in a vaguely fetal position, clutching your rolled-up coat as a pillow. A rock has embedded itself perfectly into your shoulder blade like it was designed by a vengeful chiropractor. Soot is sprawled across your boots, snoring gently. Clancy stands nearby, chewing on something that might be grass, might be your dignity. You sit up, slowly. Every joint makes a different complaint. Your neck clicks. Your back pops. Your left ankle feels like it's been replaced with a bag of gravel. And then it hits you. Something is in your boot. Not a metaphor this time. Something moves. You freeze. Soot lifts his head and tilts it at you, concerned. You wiggle your foot slightly. There's a definite shift inside the boot. Your brain races through the possibilities. Scorpion tarantula. Angry beetle colony. Please don't be a snake. Please don't be a snake. You whisper the words like a prayer. You reach down ever so slowly and unlace the boot with the kind of precision that belongs in bomb defusal manuals. Every tug of the lace feels like a countdown. You hold your breath, and then you pull the boot off in one swift, desperate motion. Out flops a small, slender, very offended snake. It hits the dirt with a dull plop, coils once, and stares at you like, how dare you? You scream. Not a full scream, more of a strangled squeak, but loud enough for Soot to leap to his feet with a bark, and Clancy to flinch as if he's just remembered taxes are due. The snake slithers off in a huff, clearly unimpressed. You sit there, panting, foot-bare boot still in your hand, and wonder what poor life choices brought you to this exact moment. The answer is all of them. Snake-in-boot encounters were more than just cartoon tropes. Early Westerners regularly dealt with animals crawling into warm places overnight. Boots, bedrolls, and blankets were prime real estate. Travelers were taught to shake out their gear every single morning. Some did, some didn't. Scholars still debate whether this was viewed as a daily ritual or just another reminder that nature wanted you dead. You pour out your other boot. Empty. Small miracles. Your sock is damp. From sweat, from snake, you choose not to know. You take a long drink from your canteen. It's still half full. You rationed well, or maybe your throat has just given up asking. Either way, it tastes like metal and dust and small questionable victories. You stand, stretch, and instantly regret it. Your spine tries to fold in half the wrong way. You look over at Clancy. Thanks for not warning me, he sneezes. Soot trots up and licks your shin as if to say you're still alive, so quit whining. You break camp. Not that there was much to pack. Your bedroll consists of one threadbare blanket and a bag that smells like bacon and regret. Your saddlebag's lighter than you remember, probably because you ate all the good stuff and left yourself with one final strip of jerky and a piece of stale hardtack. You chew the hardtack slowly with the expression of someone gnawing a decorative tile. Your teeth don't appreciate it. Your jaw may never forgive you. Clancy seems restless. You mount up wincing as the saddle makes direct contact with a very specific bruise from yesterday's cactus incident. You shift. Twice. Nothing helps. There's no such thing as a comfortable position anymore. Only less bad ones. You ride on. The morning is quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that has no birds, no insects, no wind. Just the sound of your horse's hooves on dry dirt and the occasional sniffle from Soot. The trail is less of a trail now, more a suggestion carved into the earth by stubborn boots and lost wheels. You follow it anyway, because the alternative is wandering aimlessly until you're nothing but a crunchy anecdote. Up ahead, the land begins to rise. Not steeply, just enough to feel it in your thighs. The scrub brush grows taller. You pass a cluster of yucca plants that look like they're glaring at you. One has a skull resting in its shadow. Animal, you hope. You round a bend and stop. There it is. Dustbone. It's not what you expected. You imagine something bigger, livelier, maybe even inviting. Instead, it's a handful of low buildings, clustered around a well, and a crooked sign that leans to the right, like it gave up halfway through spelling its own name. One building says mercantile in peeling paint. Another has a rusted bell and a boarded-up window that might have once been a schoolhouse or a saloon with literacy ambitions. You ride in slowly, waiting for someone to shout or wave or shoot at you. Nothing. The only movement is a curtain twitching in a second-story window and an old man asleep on a bench outside the post office, hat pulled over his eyes, snoring like a small dedicated sawmill. Soot lets out a soft woof. Clancy halts. You made it. No fanfare, no welcome party, just a sun-baked silence and the smell of horses, beans and decisions you'll never be able to undo. You dismount, legs trembling back, aching face covered in dust-dried sweat, and the lingering shame of having screamed at a reptile the size of a shoelace. You tie up Clancy Pat Soot and take one slow step into town. You're here. You survived the night, barely. The first thing that strikes you about Dustbone, aside from the name that sounds like a diagnosis, is just how tired it looks. Everything leans. The buildings, the fences, even the horses tied out front of the mercantile have that same slouching posture you do. The whole town looks like it's been exhaling for 30 years and never quite managed to inhale again. Dust clings to every surface. Doors hang open with no enthusiasm. A faded poster on the wall peels in the breeze, offering a reward for a man who's either long gone or quietly playing checkers somewhere under an alias. Soot pads ahead of you, tail raised ears, twitching at every creak and shuffle. Clancy follows behind, clopping with the practiced disdain of someone who knows you, owe him an apology, and probably a carrot. You make your way toward the mercantile. Inside, it's dim, cooler than the street, and smells like old cloth molasses and mouse. The place is cluttered barrels of pickled things you don't want to identify, a wall of rusting tools and a counter manned by a man who appears to be held together entirely by suspenders and stubbornness. He looks up, blinks, then squints like he's trying to decide whether you're a customer or just another hallucination brought on by heatstroke. Morning, you croak. Is it? He replies, voice like gravel, in a coffee grinder. You nod toward the shelves. Got anything that doesn't taste like dust or despair? He scratches his chin. Got a can of peaches. You pause. Real ones. He shrugs. Real as anything around here. You slap a coin down on the counter without checking its value. He doesn't check it either, just slides it into a box with a nod and plops a dented can in front of you. It's scratched, faded, and covered in what might be grease, but the word peaches is still legible. That's all that matters. You step outside and sit on the porch back against the railing. The wood groans. You don't care. You dig into the can with a borrowed spoon the first bite. Cold, syrupy, and so sweet you almost cry. Soot sits beside you, head tilted. You share a bite. He seems unsure about the texture, but commits. Clancy chews a rope. The sun rises higher. The town stays slow. Across the street, the old man on the bench wakes up, adjusts his hat, and immediately falls asleep again. A woman with 2 buckets walks past without acknowledging your existence. The blacksmith's hammer rings out in a lazy rhythm, less clang and more clunk. You look around and realize something strange. There's no urgency here. No rush. No fight or flight. It's the first place you've been since stepping into this dust-stained saga, where people don't look like they're 5 minutes away from being buried or bitten. It's almost peaceful. Almost. Then the wind shifts, and you smell something awful. Something sour, rotten, and profoundly alive. You turn your head and realize it's you. You sniff your armpit, regret it instantly. It's not just sweat. It's trail stink. Smoke, grime, animal bacon, 1 near-death experience, 2 cactus incidents, and a full-body marinade in anxiety. You smell like someone barbecued shame and left it to ferment in a saddlebags. You need a bath. You ask around. No one answers. They just nod toward the edge of town. There you find it. A bathhouse. It's a shed, with a tin tub, and a sign that says, "Wash, 10 cents." Inside, it's hot airless and smells like boiled despair. The tub sits in the middle, like a forgotten baptismal font. A bucket of lukewarm water steams faintly beside it. You pay the coin to a woman who doesn't smile and walks out without a word. The door doesn't lock. There's no curtain, just a nail to hang your clothes, and a window placed exactly wrong. You strip. You don't want to look down, but you do. You're covered in a layer of dust so thick you could be buried with it, and archaeologists would think you were ceremonial. Your skin is cracked. Your socks have reached the texture of cracker crust. You are officially disgusting. You lower yourself into the tub and scream. Not out loud, not quite, but inside every nerve screams. The water is tepid gritty, and the bottom of the tub has bumps that you hope are soap residue but fear are something far more biological. Still, it's water. You wash. You scrub with something that might be a sponge, might be a sea creature. You use a bar of soap so old it has lost its edges and smells faintly of mildew and pine. You do your best. That's all the West ever asks. 15 minutes later you emerge. Cleanish, damp, slightly improved. Your skin is raw in spots. Your hair smells vaguely floral. You feel like a person again, albeit one who's just crawled out of a swamp with a coupon for dignity. You return to the mercantile and buy a shirt, used, patched, and made of questionable fabric. It's better than your current one which you burn behind the bathhouse without ceremony. Soot watches the fire tail wagging like he's proud of you. You wander back into the town square where nothing has changed. The wind still kicks up little swirls of dirt. The blacksmith still hammers. The old man still sleeps. You sit again this time, not sticking to the bench. You're still sore, still tired, still bruised in both the literal and emotional sense. But for the first time all day, you don't stink. You call that progress. Evening settles over Dustbone like a dusty quilt, uneven, scratchy, and full of tiny things that might bite. The light fades slow and sideways, pouring long shadows across the street. Somewhere, a lantern creaks as it swings gently in the breeze. A dog barks 2 towns over. Soot lifts his head but doesn't move. You both know that bark's none of your business. You sit on the mercantile's porch, wrapped in your newly acquired shirt, a garment that smells like it was boiled in mothballs and secrets. It's still better than the scorched rag you left smouldering behind the bathhouse. You shift your weight on the bench. Your muscles complain. Your spine cracks once like a rifle shot. Still, you feel cleaner than you've felt in days. Across the street, a woman is sweeping dust off her porch, which is roughly the same as bailing out a sinking boat with a thimble. But she does it anyway, rhythmic and stubborn. Dustbone, it seems, doesn't quit. It just limps forward. Dinner is a matter of scraping together what's left in your saddlebag and what you can afford from the mercantile. You settle for a small loaf of dry bread, a tiny wedge of cheese with the personality of a brick, and the last strip of jerky you swore you'd throw away 3 days ago. You chew slowly, hoping your teeth don't give up halfway. Soot gets a chunk of bread and half the cheese. He eats it in one gulp and looks at you like, "That's it. Blame the economy," you mutter. The sky darkens. Stars peek out one by one. You watch them form slow constellations while your body sinks into that familiar saddle soreness that no bath can fix. Somewhere in your lower back, a single nerve pulses with a rhythm that sounds like you will never sit right again. You debate sleeping on the porch. It's flat, it's shaded, and no one's kicked you yet. But then a cloud of mosquitoes rises from underneath the floorboards and starts hovering like tiny bloodthirsty tax agents. So you find your way to the lodging. That's what the sign says. Not hotel, not inn, just lodging. Inside, it's dim and smells of old boots, older coffee and pine resin trying desperately to cover up years of other smells. The woman behind the desk is the same one who took your coin at the bathhouse. She doesn't look up, just says, "1 room left, corner. Don't touch the curtain, it falls." You hand over a few coins. She drops a rusted key into your hand. Bed's clean, mostly. The hallway is narrow and lined with wallpaper that gave up decades ago. You find your door. You don't even need the key. The knob turns with a creak so profound. It sounds like a deathbed confession. The room is functional. A bed, a chair, A table with a crack running right through the middle. The mattress sags like someone much heavier than you gave it an existential crisis. But it is a mattress, and it's indoors, and there's a roof. You sit on the edge, it wheezes, you lie back, it groans. You stare at the ceiling. There's a spot in one corner that looks suspiciously like the face of Abraham Lincoln, or a raccoon. Hard to say. Soot curls up on the floor beside you with a thud. You close your eyes, but your brain doesn't. It replays everything. The outhouse, the jerky, the saloon shootout, the cactus, the snake in your boot. Every humiliating, itchy, painful, bizarre moment rolls through your mind like a parade of dusty regret. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still intact. You've got a shirt that fits a dog who hasn't abandoned you, and a horse tied up outside who, while emotionally distant, hasn't kicked you in the ribs. You let out a long, slow exhale. The bed might collapse under you, the roof might leak, but for tonight, you are horizontal cleanish and free from the immediate threat of wildlife in your footwear. Historically, frontier towns like Dustbone offered minimal comfort. Lodgings were often just rooms above saloons or general stores with communal baths, if any, and bedding that came with its own micro-ecosystem. Scholars argue whether this made people tougher or simply more sleep-deprived. Either way, the West wasn't built for rest. It was built for endurance. You turn on your side, groaning. Something under the mattress pokes your ribs. You don't even investigate. You just adjust. That's the West's ultimate lesson: you adjust. Soot lets out a soft, satisfied sigh. Outside, the breeze shifts. A shutter bangs. A drunk laughs. You close your eyes again. This time, they stay closed. You wake up, confused. Not because something's wrong, no, that would be easier. You wake up confused because for the first time in what feels like an eternity, you're not in pain. At least not immediately. Your eyes flutter open to dim golden light, streaming through a cracked window pane, painting little lines across the floor. Dust motes swirl like lazy fireflies. Your back doesn't scream, your neck doesn't pop. Your thighs still ache, sure, but more like they've filed a complaint rather than called for a mutiny. You lie there a moment, blinking at the ceiling and the water stain that still resembles Abraham Lincoln, or possibly a surprised possum. Hard to tell. Soot is curled on the floor beside the bed, still asleep. He twitches, occasionally chasing some ghost rabbit through dreamscape wilderness. You smile. You don't mean to. It just happens. Then you try to sit up. Pop. Ah, there it is. Your body reminds you firmly that rest doesn't reset trauma. It just mutes it for a while. You groan your way upright. The floorboards creak under your boots as you pull them on, very aware of every tender inch of skin still recovering from trail rash, cactus pokes, and at least one snake-related existential crisis. Outside, Dustbone stirs to life with all the energy of a very old man putting on socks. The blacksmith's hammer starts up again, slower today. A mule brays somewhere behind the mercantile. The same poster flaps lazily in the breeze. It still hasn't caught your attention enough to read. You step out into the street, blinking in the new sun. There's no agenda, no urgent mission, just survival. And maybe breakfast if the West is feeling generous. You wander down the street and find what you might call a diner. It's really just a lean-to attached to a larger building with a sign out front that says hot meals most days, place. Inside it smells like overcooked beans and desperation, but you sit anyway. The woman running it gives you a biscuit the consistency of old furniture and a slice of ham with a burn line so perfect it could have been made with a branding iron. You eat both with reverence. Soot waits patiently outside, then not so patiently, once he realizes the ham isn't coming his way. Mid-bite, you overhear a conversation at the next table. Two men. One has a map spread out, the other points at it with a toothpick like he's directing military strategy. Words drift over old trail, washed-out bridge. Not passable. Unless you swing north, and the dreaded phrase, "You'll need to cross Buzzard's Basin." You blink. Buzzard's Basin. It sounds like a joke. Or a dare. But judging by the way one of them sighs afterward, it's definitely real. Definitely not a place you want to be. And judging by your luck, definitely where you're headed next. You finish your meal and step back outside. Dustbone continues its slow-motion existence. Then you hear your name. Well, not your name exactly. Just someone calling out. "Hey, traveller." You look up. It's the old man from the bench, the one who's been asleep more than awake. He waves you over. You cross the street, Soot at your heel. You going north, he asks. Eventually you answer, unsure what else to say. He nods, eyes half-lidded. Then you'll need this. He hands you a folded scrap of paper. Old. Smudged. Smells faintly of kerosene and tobacco. You unfold it carefully. It's a hand-drawn map. Not much detail, just a few squiggles, landmarks, and 3 ominous X's labelled Washoot Don't Cross and Y. You look back up. He's already snoring again. You consider giving the map back, but something about it feels important. Like it might be the one thing between you and a canyon full of bones and regret. You thank him anyway. The day is heating up. The town has reached its usual pace, glacial. You pass a boy chasing a chicken with the energy of someone trying to invent chaos. 2 women argue over a tin bucket. A man sits on the roof of a shed playing a banjo slowly and very badly. You find Clancy in the shade, half asleep, standing like a living statue. His eyes open when you approach. He flicks his ears. You swear, he sighs. Don't worry, you murmur. We're not leaving just yet. You spend the next hour checking your gear. What little of it remains. Your saddlebag has 1 biscuit, a few strips of jerky, and something that used to be cheese. Your canteen's full. Your revolver is still unloaded. You never bought more bullets after the canyon incident. You figure if you need it again, it'll probably jam anyway. You check the map again. There's a route, not a good one, but it goes north toward wherever your dumb heart thinks is next. That's the curse of the West. It's never here. It's always next. By midday, you've got a plan. Not a good one. Just enough of one to feel dangerous again. Clancy's saddled. Soot's fed. You're sunburned. Everything's back to normal. You tip your hat to the town of Dustbone quietly without fanfare and whisper your thanks. For the food, for the tub, for the night of sleep without bullets or bandits or uninvited reptiles. You ride out slow, no rush. The West isn't going anywhere, but you are. Because surviving 1 day out here, that's impressive. But surviving 2, that's personal. You leave Dustbone like a man tiptoeing out of a sleeping bear's cave, carefully, quietly, and half expecting someone to shout, "Hey, you forgot your consequences," but no one does. The town simply shrinks behind you, its buildings slouching in the heat, its silence wrapping back around itself like a lizard curling under a rock. Clancy plods forward, steady as ever. Soot trots just ahead, occasionally stopping to sniff a cactus or glare at a tumbleweed as if it owes him money. The sun's already working overtime, climbing higher with all the subtlety of a frying pan to the forehead. The road north isn't really a road, it's more like a dusty rumour. You follow wagon ruts when they appear and dry creek beds when they don't. The hand-drawn map crumpled in your pocket doesn't help much. It has exactly 2 types of landmarks, those labelled in nervous capital letters like "Don't camp here," and those marked with a skull. You head toward neither, aiming for the squiggly line that passes near something called Ragbone Ridge. You don't know what's there, but it sounds less homicidal than Buzzard's Basin, so that's a win. The land flattens before it rises again. Sagebrush stretches for miles. The horizon wavers in the heat. You're sweating before your second mile, but it's the kind of sweat you've come to accept, half function, half punishment. A couple hours in, you pass a wooden post sticking out of the dirt with a horseshoe nailed to the top. It's not a marker. It's a warning. Someone's old trail sign, maybe, or someone's last joke. Either way, Clancy snorts and veers wide. You follow his lead. You find a stretch of shade under a rocky overhang and pause for water. Soot gulps it like he's been licking ghosts all morning. You pour some into your palm and splash it on your face. It feels less like relief and more like rehydrating a crusty clay statue. Then you hear something. Buzzing. Not bees. Not flies. Flies would be merciful. No, this is a swarm. You look up, and there it is. A bloated carcass. Maybe a cow. Maybe a very large deer. Hard to tell. It's halfway down, a slope, ribs jutting out, eyes long gone. The air shimmers above it. The smell hits a second later, like hot garbage boiled in old gravy. Soot growls. Clancy turns away. You hold your breath and skirt wide, giving the carcass a 50-foot berth. Even at that distance, the flies come for you, lazy, bloated things that stick to your face and hands. You swat like a madman, then give up. The West doesn't care about your dignity. Scavengers must have gotten to the body first. Coyotes, buzzards, maybe something larger. You don't think about it too long. Death out here isn't dramatic. It's constant. And boring. You ride past bones like city folks past potholes. Part of the scenery. Part of the risk. Scholars argue how much travelers truly feared the wild. Some accounts romanticize the journey, while others are filled with tales of sudden vanishings, animal attacks, and weather turning fatal with no warning. The truth lies somewhere between journal entries and gravestones. You keep moving. Eventually the land rises again, Ragbone Ridge. Not steep, but long. The kind of incline that doesn't look bad until your thighs start to scream halfway up. Clancy huffs. You huff louder. Soot trots ahead like this is all beneath him. By the time you reach the top, you're sweating through your boots. But the view, worth it. You stand at the edge of a drop, the land falling away into layered ridges and canyons, each more sunburned than the last. The colors shift from gold to rust, to a kind of dusty purple as the sky starts its slow descent toward evening. It's so wide, so open, so unapologetically empty that you suddenly feel small enough to fit in your own boot heel. You sit. Not on a rock rocks betray. You sit on your coat spread over dirt legs stretched. Clancy grazes on something that might be edible. Soot curls beside you. You break out the last of your jerky. Tear off a piece for the dog. Chew slowly. The wind picks up just enough to keep the flies away. You watch the shadows grow. You think for a moment about going back. Back to the shack. Back to Dustbone. Back to the one clean shirt and the bathhouse and the blacksmith who nodded at you once. But you don't, because going back isn't part of the story. You didn't come out here to loop back to comfort. You came out here unintentionally, perhaps idiotically, to see something. And today you're seeing it. From a ridge no one marked on a proper map. With a dog that bites bandits, and a horse that probably resents you but hasn't thrown you off yet. You lie back, hat over your eyes, and let the warmth seep in. The trail ahead is unknown, which in the west is just another way of saying normal. The sun slips below the horizon, with all the subtlety of a door slowly closing on your last good idea. The sky turns bruised purple and gold, streaked with that fiery orange that makes everything look holy for about 12 minutes. Then the light fades too fast, and suddenly it's cold again. Biting cold, the kind that licks the sweat off your back and leaves a chill in its place. You don't have a real camp. Just the ridge, your coat, and a horse that keeps shifting his weight like he's trying to remind you that sleeping is a you problem. Soot curls up next to you with a grunt and promptly begins to snore in short, wheezy bursts. You start a fire not because you need to cook anything, but because you need the illusion of safety. The flames crackle and spit their little dance, giving just enough light to push the shadows back a few feet. It's not much, but it's yours. You chew the last of your biscuit. It's gone stale overnight. Or maybe it was always stale, and now you're just more honest about it. You don't care. Your teeth do, but you don't. The stars come out one by one, bold and bright. Out here, they're not background decoration. They're loud. They blaze overhead, humming with distance and indifference. You try to trace constellations but get distracted by the sheer volume of it. It's like the sky dumped an entire bucket of glitter onto your night. Sitting there on that ridge, chewing cardboard bread beside a mildly farting dog and a horse who refuses to sit, something strange happens. You feel okay. Not good, not joyful, but okay. Your shirt's itchy. Your boots are wet with dew. You're pretty sure something bit your ankle and ran off laughing. But still, there's a peace in the discomfort. A sort of truce between you and the elements. You've stopped fighting the dust. You've stopped hoping for ease. You're just in it now. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote howls. Not close, just close enough to say we're still out here. Soot lifts his head, growls once, settles back down. You throw a few more sticks on the fire. The map in your coat pocket crackles when you shift. You take it out, unfold it in the firelight, and study the next mark. A place labelled Cistern Gulch, underlined twice and next to it in shaky script. Do not drink the water. Seriously. Good to know. The route to it looks indirect. There's no road, just a dotted line that threads between ridges and over a small dry riverbed. You trace it with your finger. It'll take most of tomorrow if Clancy cooperates and nothing bites you too hard. You fold the map again and tuck it away. Let tomorrow be tomorrow. You lie down on your coat, staring up at the stars, and think about how absurd it is that you've survived this long. That somehow, against all probability, you've made it past bad bacon, bad bath water, bandits, snakes, dust, saddle rash, and whatever weird thing is still crawling around in your socks. You've survived boredom and silence and the kind of loneliness that lingers behind your ribs when the wind dies down. And yet you don't feel alone. You've got a dog, a horse, a revolver with no bullets, and a gut feeling that maybe, just maybe, this place, this wide broken land has more to offer than misery. Historically, travellers on the frontier often spoke of trail quiet, a stillness that settled in at night, broken only by the fire and the occasional distant animal. Some described it as peaceful. Others said it drove them halfway mad. Scholars debate whether these nights deepened the soul or just stretched it thin. You watch your fire shrink to embers. You pull your coat tighter. And for a few minutes, maybe more, you don't think about food or pain or where your next patch of shade will come from. You just breathe. And the west, for once, doesn't answer back. The trail curves away from Cistern Gulch, mercifully uphill. You don't usually associate uphill with good things, especially not while perched atop a saddle that feels increasingly like a medieval punishment device. But leaving that place behind puts a little fire in your ribs. Whatever that water was doing, it wasn't natural. You can still smell it on your clothes like the ghost of a bad idea clinging to your shirt collar. Clancy trudges forward without needing much coaxing. Even he seems spooked. His ears twitch, constantly scanning the breeze like it might start speaking Latin. Soot trots close to your heel, head down silent. Not a sniff, not a bark, not even a pause for cactus peeing. That's when you know no one liked that gulch. The landscape ahead shifts again. The trail is narrow and rough-cut into the slope of a stony ridge that overlooks a shallow canyon. The wind whips through the rocks sharp, and constant carrying sand that stings your cheeks and settles behind your eyes. You blink, you squint, you taste dust again. Of course, the sun sinks lower behind you. You don't need a watch to know it's late. The light has changed amber and long soft around the edges. That tricksy golden hour that photographers love and cowards dread. It makes everything look beautiful. Even the stuff that'll kill you. You steer Clancy along the edge carefully, eyes darting from trail to horizon. There's something about this place, it's quiet maybe, its posture. Everything here feels still, too still, the kind of stillness that waits. Then you see the first marker. A pile of rocks, deliberately stacked, carefully balanced. You've seen them before. Grave markers usually. No names. Just stones placed by strangers too tired to dig deep and too respectful to walk away. You pass another, then another. The third has a crude wooden cross, sticking out of the top barely upright. Wind has worn it smooth, and something is tied to the middle. A strip of cloth maybe. Could have been red once. Or blue. Or just blood-stained. You don't ask. You don't stop. Soot walks slower now, body low to the ground. Clancy's steps grow heavier. You start to hear things. Not voices. Not quite. Just noise. A faint rustling. A whispering breeze that dips and tugs at your coat like it's trying to get your attention. You stop the horse. You listen. Silence. And then a sound you do recognize. Hoofbeats. But not yours. Not Clancy's. You turn around slowly, every hair on your neck standing straight. The trail behind you is empty. Just dust light and the faint impression of your own tracks. But the hoofbeats continue. You dismount, heart thudding. Soot growls. You hold your breath. Nothing. No one. Just your own horse. Your own dog. You shake your head. Try to laugh. It comes out as a short cough. Long day, you mutter. But the unease doesn't leave. Historically, places like this, dry canyons, ridges with too many unmarked graves, acquired stories. Campfire tales of ghost riders. Unfinished duels. Horses that wandered without riders and never cast shadows. Scholars remain divided. Some say these stories were just warnings, disguised as folklore. Others believe the quiet had a way of burrowing into the mind and stirring up things best left alone. You lead Clancy by the reins for the next mile. You don't ride. Not here. The wind keeps picking up, threading around your boots, plucking at your hat brim, finding its way into your sleeves. It sings through the stones, a strange high whistle like a tea kettle on the verge of boiling over. Then you spot something ahead. A shack. Of course. You've learned by now that in the West, shelters aren't refuges. They're tests. Some are empty. Some are occupied. Some used to be occupied. This one leans to the side like it's mid-sneeze. Half the roof is missing. A chimney juts upward, long unused. The front door hangs open, swaying slightly. You hesitate. You want to keep walking. You also want off your feet. You want a roof over your head, even if it's just 3 boards and a hole in the ceiling. You approach slowly. Inside it's dark. Not pitch black, just enough shadow to hide things. You step through the doorway and pause, letting your eyes adjust. The shack is empty. Dust drapes everything like a funeral cloth. A table, 2 chairs, one broken. A cot in the corner, sagging, still holding the impression of a body long gone. You don't look too close. You sit. Your legs ache. Your head swims. You drink from your canteen, rationed now to 3 mouthfuls. You offer Soot the second. He laps it gently. The third you save. Clancy waits outside, head bowed against the rising wind. You lie back just for a moment, just to breathe. Then a sound. Clink. You sit bolt upright. The noise came from behind the shack. You grip your revolver, empty or not. Soot growls low. You rise. Step toward the back. Peer out the window. Nothing. Just the ridge. And then A shape. Dark. Horse-shaped. You blink. Gone. You don't sleep that night. You sit by the broken table, back to the wall, revolver on your knee, eyes scanning every shadow. The wind hisses through the cracks and the stars blink cold above the roof. You whisper to Soot just stories. He doesn't look convinced. Neither are you. You don't remember falling asleep. 1 second, you're wide-eyed in the dark, every creak of wood and hiss of wind setting your nerves on edge. The next, the pale light of dawn filters through a missing roof panel and slaps you directly across the face like it's offended. You didn't request a wake-up call. Your body aches in new and creative ways. You'd slept sitting up, boots on back, braced against the wall. The revolver is still in your lap and Soot is still beside you, chin on paws, eyes already open. You slept, huh? You mutter. He yawns, non-committal. Clancy is outside exactly where you left him, which is a small miracle in itself. He's dusted with a fine layer of early morning chill steam rising faintly from his flanks. You stand slowly. A dozen muscles protest. You ignore all of them. The trail ahead runs northwest now, according to the cursed map. Just past the broken shack, and around the edge of the bluff, lies what the map calls Needleback Pass. You're not a fan of that name. Soot drinks from the last of the water. You ration 1 final mouthful for yourself. Warm, metallic, precious. Then you sling the saddlebag over Clancy, adjust the cinch, and mount with a grunt that suggests you're either in pain or becoming part horse. Maybe both. The air is dry but sharp, the kind that creeps into your lungs and reminds you how thin the veil between alive and slightly too tired really is. You ride. The land tightens around you, as if the ridge is narrowing with every step. The path winds through needle-shaped rocks that jut upward like the backs of buried beasts. The trail lives up to its name, Needleback. It makes sense now. The wind funnels through like it's being chased. You wrap your coat tighter, hat pulled low, trying to keep the chill and the dust from stealing what's left of your comfort. Soot moves in a zigzag ahead, ducking low beneath rock arches, pausing at every blind turn. He's cautious this morning more than usual. You trust him more than the map now. Halfway through the pass, you find a scrap of fabric tangled on a branch, faded red. Maybe once a scarf, maybe a warning. You don't touch it. You just nod to it like passing a grave. Then you hear something new. Voices, low, muffled, echoing faintly down the trail. You stop. Clancy stops. Soot stares ahead, ears forward, tail rigid. You wait. Nothing. Then again. Murmurs. 2 or 3 maybe. The cadence of human voice is too far to understand, too close to ignore. You dismount. Leave Clancy. Creep forward on foot, Soot padding at your side. The pass widens slightly at the end, revealing a small plateau. There you see them. 3 men, 1 horse, 2 packs. No fire. Just crouched near a dry rock shelf sorting something. A bag. A map. You can't tell. They haven't seen you yet. You duck behind a boulder, heart pounding. You have no bullets. You have no plan. You have a harmonica, which has worked once, sure, but probably not a reliable strategy in every confrontation. You consider retreating, but Clancy might snort, or sneeze, or sigh dramatically. He's not known for discretion. You weigh your options, then you hear laughter. Not mocking, not angry. Just tired laughter. Familiar. One of the men is telling a story. You catch a word, Buzzards, then gulch, then something about sleeping on a tree root and dreaming it was a snake. You blink. They're not bandits. They're just more of you. Trail survivors. People limping westward on weak hope and worse supplies. You step out slowly, hands raised. They spot you instantly. One stands halfway, reaching for his belt. You speak quick, not here for trouble, just passing through. Same as you. He eyes you. Tall, dusty, one eye squinting against the sun. Then a nod, then pass. You do. No smiles, no questions. Just a brief nod between travelers. A shared acknowledgement that out here survival earns its own kind of respect. You lead Clancy past soot brushing against your leg. The pass narrows again, then opens one last time. And there on the far horizon you see it. A flicker of green. Not bright, not lush, but real. Grass. A low grove. A trickle of trees. A river. Small, far, but unmistakable. You almost laugh, but don't. You're too dry. Instead you just ride. Silent, grateful, suspicious. Because in the Wild West, relief never comes alone. It always brings something with it. The sun dips lower, and the land shifts once more from cruel to quiet. You ride slowly now, no rush. The threat of the trail has softened, not disappeared, just paused. The wind still hums through the dry grass, but it no longer bites. The air cools, your breath slows. Your limbs ache with that familiar heavy tiredness, but it's the good kind, the earned kind. The kind that tells you you made it another day. Soot trots beside you, his shadow long and stretched thin. Clancy's hooves strike the trail, in an even rhythm, steady and patient, as if he too senses the day is done. The trail curves down toward the grove ahead. The river's closer now, its sound faint like distant whispering, not threatening, just calling you gently to rest. You don't speak. You don't need to. The sky above deepens to blue-grey. Stars blink awake slow and quiet, like they're careful not to startle you. There's no more noise, no voices, no threat. Just the creak of leather, the rustle of dry leaves, and the soft, sweet hush of a landscape winding down with you. You dismount at the edge of the grove. Let Clancy graze. Let soot curl beneath a low tree. You sit in the tall grass, back against a smooth stone warmed by the sun, and look up at the sky. For the first time in what feels like forever, you are still. Safe, held by the silence. You exhale, long and slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let the stars take over the story. Let the night carry the rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.